Consequence Podcast Network.
My friendship to all of you precludes my involvement with any one of you. But if you wanna make love, then I do too, and I'll be right there behind you. All in the name of oh, all in the name of oh, all in the name of oh.
Greetings, constant listeners, and welcome to the Losers Club, a Stephen King podcast presented by the Consequence Podcast Network. I'm Michael Rothman, editor-in-chief and president of Consequence of Sound, and I'm here with my co-hosts,
Randall Colburn, the rockin' one,
and Mackenzie Gerber.
Now, you can hear us pretty well, right? I think so. That's
Yes.
because we're recording from a studio here in Chicago, Illinois. That wasn't always the case, though. When we started this podcast, we were actually huddled around an old Yeti microphone in Mac's apartment that he doesn't even live in anymore.
That's right.
And there were not 4 or 3 of us. There were like 6 or 7. So we wanted to go back to our older episodes and make sure that you, constant listener, actually have a good grasp on knowing that this is not how it's always going to sound. You know, it's a very rough quality, and we just happen to have that rough quality over Stephen King's most iconic books. So
Yeah, it's rough, but I'd say, for Carrie, Salem's Lot, The Shining, Rage, and The Stand, I believe.
Night Shift, too.
And
Night Shift.
Yeah.
We recorded those episodes in a very sort of primitive way, doing our best. That was before we got our studio, which makes us sound so lovely.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you'll notice that the audio quality is going to be a little bit not up to par, but I'd say the content of the conversations are still very, very good. I'm very proud of the analysis we did. You'll notice a few other changes too, like in these early episodes, we talk about everything.
Everything.
Yeah, we didn't now we stretch our legs a bit. We do separate episodes for the movies, for other things. And for here, we're basically like, let's talk about all the Stephen King news, as well as the book, as well as the films, as well as the plays, as well as everything. So these episodes run long. Well, I mean, a lot of ours do, but these run extra long because we're talking about those things. And you'll also notice that kind of the way that we break down our conversations now is a little bit different. We refine that over time.
Yeah.
So yeah, you'll notice that it's a little bit rougher, but it's the same quality Losers Club content
And
that
these,
you've always wanted.
these episodes nearly killed us. The Night Shift episode, I got the flu because we recorded everything.
We
in one
recorded
day.
for 11 hours straight,
Yeah.
I think.
Two
Yeah.
episodes back to back covering all 20 stories?
All 20 stories
And the movies.
And the movies. It was exhausting. I think towards the end of the episode, I started fading away.
Dan started crying.
Dan started crying. I cried in the Shining episode, I believe.
Yeah.
So yeah, these episodes are special.
They're very good episodes.
They're very special episodes, but we did want to make sure that you didn't go into this podcast thinking that it's going to sound like this forever. Because obviously, as you could hear from us right now, that's just not the case.
Yeah, if you're just popping in to hear like, oh, I love Salem's Lot, I'm going to check out this new podcast. Why does it sound like they're recording underwater? You know, we just never really thought that. I think that, you know, we were testing things out. We were seeing if anybody would even care if we did this podcast. And luckily, a lot of you guys did care, and you listened and supported us and followed us on social media. And so we were able to, you know, beef up the sound, make things sound better, expand our lineup, and refine the way that we do things as it is now. So.
Because so much has changed since 2017, not only with us, but the whole world at large. And you're
right.
going to hear about all of it as you're journeying through each one of these episodes.
And now we'll let you venture into King's Dominion in your biohazard suit with Stephen King's The Stand.
So just to break it down for you, this is how we're going to be tackling The Stand since it's such a huge undertaking. Since it's broken up into 3 books, we're going to break our discussion of the book up into 3 episodes so we can devote as much time as possible to talking about the 3 sections because, you know, it's something you maybe don't realize on the first read, but they're actually all very different stylistically and thematically, which is why King probably broke it up that way. So that's how we're going to talk about it. And then we're going to have a 4th episode where we're going to talk about the film adaptation, the miniseries. And we're also going to have a couple fun interviews with people who are involved with that. So look forward to that because it's going to be awesome. Let's go around and introduce ourselves. To my right, who are you?
I am Dan Caffrey, also a senior writer with Consequence of Sound, and should we share experience? Are we sharing our experiences?
Yeah. Let's talk about the first time we have read The Stand, our first encounter with it.
Yeah, it was. I mean, we've talked about this a lot, but I remember the ABC miniseries was coming on. It was right when I was starting to get into Stephen King a little bit, and I remember I saw, it's the edition I actually have with me right now, is the ABC miniseries tie-in book in the grocery store, and it looked very weird to me because it had Gary Sinise and Molly Ringwald on the front. It looked like a trashy romance novel or something. So I remember being like, that's Stephen King, and then I asked my dad what it was about, and he told me. I watched the miniseries and then read it. I remember actually being kind of disappointed because when I got the first edition from the library, it has that cover of like the demon creature with the sickle, and then the elf or white knight fighting with the sword. I legit thought it was going to be a fantasy novel, and although there are fantasy elements in it for sure, and we'll talk about this as we go on, King took a lot of inspiration from Lord of the Rings. There's obviously never a scene like that in the book, and I kept asking my dad, I'm like, well, dude,
when does the green thing
Yeah,
show up?
did they fight in the desert? And he's like, well, there is a fight in the desert, but not how you may think. So anyway, I think it's needless to say, The Stand was I had far different expectations going into it than when I came out of it, even as a kid, and it will always have a special place in my heart for that.
I am Allison Shoemaker, one of the only rotating female panelists. I forgot that there aren't lots of me. It's actually just me, constant listeners. I'm also a senior writer at Consequence of Sound, and I'm about to blow your minds. This is my first experience with The Stand. Wow. It's one of the only holes in my King tapestry.
Were you aware of it when you were younger?
Yeah. No, this was one that I don't know how I got away with reading like It and Carrie when I was a kid, but my mom didn't want me to read this one. I also haven't seen the miniseries.
Oh wow!
I'm fresh as the driven snow, so I hope that will be an interesting perspective.
I think it will be.
I'm reading the books as we're talking about them, so I have only read book one. I'm fine being spoiled, but I'm prepared to unleash outlandish theories about what might happen.
Mm-hmm. All right.
And I have no idea.
And just so you listeners know, we're going to do our best, obviously, to when we talk about characters in this book, only talking about characters who are introduced in book one, but we may talk about future events because
I think we're always, if it benefits the conversation, we'll talk about the grander context and perhaps where they're heading to a degree, but we'll try to keep spoilers to a minimum. Mm-hmm. So,
hi, I'm Justin Gerber. I'm also with Consequence of Sound, and I guess my experience is very similar to Dan's, where I saw the original hardcover and saw the sickle and death or whatever, and the knight with the long hair. And I figured this was some fantastical tale along the lines of Eyes of the Dragon or something like that. And again, I saw Gary Sinise and Molly Ringwald on the cover of like TV Guides. Like, what is this?
Yeah.
So I read the book. I mean, I saw the miniseries years before I read the book because a friend of mine, even after the miniseries, said that the book was really boring, didn't pay off.
What?
And so I put it off for years. So I read it for the first time probably 15 years ago or so. And, when you get older, you've got different takes on things that you might have, from what you might have had when you were younger. So I'm looking forward to talking about The Stand now.
Got some hot takes.
Some takes both cold and hot, probably, but we'll see what happens.
Hey, it's the dichotomy of the book.
Hey.
It is a little bit,
Yeah.
Good
This
versus evil.
really is about like Slate versus BuzzFeed. It really is.
That's right,
Hot
finally.
versus cold takes.
We're getting down to it.
Well, it's like the Katy Perry song. I'm hot and I'm cold.
All right.
it's just
It's not
like that.
those aren't the lyrics at all.
The words hot and cold are in it.
They are in the
true.
song.
Talking about that demon knight on the cover, that is still kind of a scary cover to me because the knight looks like so worried on it. Like he looks like he doesn't think he's going to win this stand,
Well,
this
the
battle.
symbolism and the allegories are rich
It's great.
in that cover.
I'm partial to the cover of my Kindle edition.
Oh, it's like
Just right here.
Oh, is it the guy with the gold tooth?
Oh,
in
yeah.
there?
Who's this supposed to be? Like the
kid?
rat man? It's the rat man.
Does the kid have?
I feel like he does have a gold tooth. The
maybe
kid
he does.
Maybe that'd be weird to put the kid on.
Well, they'll represent the uncut edition, though, so that
That's
makes
true.
sense.
Yeah, I have the same, because my Kindle edition has the same cover too, and I just assumed that was supposed to be flag. But,
Yeah, maybe he does.
Yeah, I did
Well,
too.
the copies that Mike and I have are just a long road with
dead
Dead
bodies.
bodies.
strewn about.
Yeah, it's
Strewn
it's a
about,
photo from Poland, 1945.
Oh.
I have on the cover. I'm just joking. It's not even that wouldn't even be the right year.
So who,
it's
who
a
are
awful
you?
joke.
Who are you that just made
So,
that very sensitive joke?
Make sure you
insensitive
illustrate your
joke.
last name. So you-
Yeah, no, it's fine. I'm a son of my Jewish father, Richard Rothman. Michael Rothman from Consequence of Sound. I'm the editor-in-chief there for almost 10 years now. This is it's been a real great time.
That's as long as the iPhone.
Yeah, right.
My God.
It is. Well, when the iPhone came out, we were like, I got to compete with this thing. So.
Nobody else has a music website.
No,
We need to be the.
we got to do it. It's there's like this, the seeded story there. My experience with The Stand actually goes back to the miniseries. My babysitter when I was in the early 90s, which I was 10 years old at the time, so I don't know why my parents thought I needed a babysitter, but maybe it was for my 4-year-old brother. But anyway, my best friend's older brother, who's tragically actually now deceased, but he was taking care of us, and he must have just rented the Stand. I had fallen asleep on the couch, and I woke up, I think around the time when Stu was getting out of Stovington.
Oh, jeez.
And so I had watched this thing with him, and I'm like, whoa, what is this? At the time, there wasn't a lot of post-apocalyptic movies. I mean, yeah, sure, there was Mad Max and here and I had never seen them, so it was very kind of almost like my first experience with a post-apocalyptic story. And so I just watched it from there and never really went back to it until a few years later. And I actually didn't even know it was a Stephen King thing until I put the 2 and 2 together. Once I actually found out what that movie was, and I was like, why is Lieutenant Dan in this movie? But so it really did connect with me on a visceral level, just in terms of the visions of an apocalypse. Mm-hmm. I also went to despite my Jewish family, went to Christian and Catholic school, so I had known about Revelations and the end of the world and all this other stuff. So it was it definitely haunted me, especially when I would learn about hell and heaven, and they kind of tortured the kids that way in school. So just being able to see that in the movie, it actually did really inform what good and evil was for me just growing up. So that was kind of an interesting thing. But I actually didn't read the book until I want to say late high school, and then I finished it sometime in college. And I definitely had a much better experience reading it now than I did back then. So
it's funny, and this comes up a lot more in books 2 and 3 than 1. But the religious element is something that I feel like I was more drawn to the apocalypse stuff when I was younger. The biological warfare, manufactured germs and all that. That's what haunted me. But I also didn't have a religious upbringing, so I do wonder I'm just wondering how different people with different religious experiences have been informed by the book. Because the religious stuff for me is something I struggle with a bit in the book, but I wonder, it could be super haunting to you if you grew up a Christian.
I think when it comes to, especially book 2 and 3, definitely cover the religious aspects, so I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to getting to those.
Yeah, and I think that, my first experience, I love what you just said about, it defining good and evil for you. I was at a very impressionable age when I read it, and I think I was still understanding those things for me, and I remember thinking, I'm well, I want to be part of Mother Abigail's camp. So I was I don't want to get the bad dreams.
exactly.
So I always remember thinking, and I was well, I need to not do drugs. But yeah.
But it's Vegas that doesn't like drugs.
I know. Well, the thing is, they'll crucify you if you do drugs. So regardless,
has that religious element to it.
I had seen the miniseries, and the funny thing is, I don't remember how it ended up in my house, but it was a 4 VHS tape thing, and I remember thinking that was really cool.
Yeah.
From
And
World Vision Home Video Inc. There's
Yeah.
an ad for it. In the back of
World
the-
Vision Home Video Inc.
Love World Vision.
They were a huge part of my childhood, and so, but no, I remember seeing this 4 VHS tape thing, and I was really into movies, and so I devoured it. I thought it was really cool, but I was also kind of scared. I don't remember how old I was, but I was pretty young. It was right when it came out, and I watched it and thought it was so cool. And I remember trying to talk to my parents about it, and they were very disinterested. They're not really into movies, and they were just stop talking to me about this horror thing.
Go to your room.
Go play sports, And so, but then I loved it so much, and I talked about it all the time, and I wanted to read the book. But and then it was around Christmas, I think, and I remember Christmas morning I had a paperback. It was the one with the crow on the front. It was all black with a crow on the front. I think it maybe had been the Penguin edition. I could be wrong, but it was that was to me one of the most important copies of a book that I ever had, and because it was the biggest book I'd ever read. It was the uncut edition, which I think had come out only a couple of years previous, and I remember thinking it was like a huge undertaking, and I would just sit in my room and read it, and I remember being it was like my first encounter with so many things. Like rereading it, some of the violence in the book, the way they talk about people's faces, like getting blown off by guns. Like I had never read anything
he does
like
that a lot. Like literally, like half of someone's face being gone.
Disappears. Yeah. And then I had read Michael Crichton, and his books were violent, but not as violent as this. And I remember being very shaken by that, and then the sexual stuff that arises with. No spoilers, but between
I don't
two
care about
characters.
spoilers.
No, but but just
Let's just
Anybody listening
say-
is reading along, maybe.
And there
There's
are
let's just say there's a lot of pound cake to eat.
there's a lot of pound cake, but there's also
Yes.
there's also some sexual stuff that I think is written quite well in
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
book.
Yes.
And I remember being very titillated by it because it was stuff that was still very far out of my experience in any way, shape, or form.
You mentioned the uncut edition. Somebody on Facebook commented that right now they're reading their old 1978 edition.
so
we
cool.
should specify that we are going to be covering the uncut
uncut.
edition. So if you're reading along, again, read
Everyone here, we all read the
90
uncut
version.
edition, right?
Yes,
But
yes.
we are going to address the differences.
Yeah,
between the two.
but you need to read the uncut edition if you're following along with the
Yeah.
plot, definitely.
I feel like maybe I read the cut version when I was younger, but I've read the book a lot at this point. So I
I've
can't
only
remember.
read the uncut version.
It's very hard to find now. I think
Yeah.
we were just saying.
Yeah, if you find the actual, the cover that you've been talking about with the sickle and the White Knight, it's the one that there's the red banner. It's actually really gaudy. Like the uncut version has this
It's pretty
new and
pronounced.
uncut.
It says
Yeah.
complete and uncut
Yeah,
on every cover.
but the
so
one that the
you
original
can't
one
miss
just has it's like a blur.
It's in the desert. Right?
Yeah, it's very blurry and it's actually more pronounced. Also,
It's like an off-white cover.
Yeah, it's really cool.
I can't hear uncut without thinking of circumcision.
Yeah, it's a little weird.
Yeah,
The
I keep
circumcised version.
it just is making me think of South Park.
South Park.
Yes.
Also of boners. Like I really can't stop.
South Park,
thinking
bigger,
about
longer,
boners.
and uncut.
That's
Which
what I was-
I didn't realize that was like
I didn't get
smart
that
ass
joke
thing until
when I was
older.
young. Yeah.
Well, I was really obsessed with dick humor because of American Pie that summer, so I was like, "Oh, they got it."
I do love.
I never was obsessed with dick humor.
I do love South Park,
Yeah.
and it would make sense with all the pound cake in this book. I think it would make sense if the stand was called the stand bigger, longer, and uncut.
Well,
Yeah.
Dan, I know that you provided some great sweet treats earlier this morning before recording, but let's just say we have rack upon rack of pound cake.
Oh, yeah.
For the book one alone.
We
So
still have
just
many
a-
pastries left from the Mexican bakery, but I don't think we'll need them because we got plenty of pound cake.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Ooh,
And we'll
You know-
get there soon. But first, let's just talk about sort of where this book came from. King had just finished writing The Shining, and he was riding high, baby. He was doing good, and I think he felt it was time. Well, he didn't, not just yet. The next book he wanted to write was actually about the Patty Hearst kidnapping and induction into the Symbionese Liberation Army. Tell me if I'm pronouncing that wrong.
Yeah,
if you
which
guys know.
is funny because Donald DeFreeze makes an appearance in the stand, and he said flag. That was a big influence.
Yep,
on flag.
I have that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was the book was going. He said that the Patty Hearst case was so filled with contradictions, and it was so bizarre that because basically it was about this Patty Hearst was from the Hearst lineage, like the William Randolph's Hearst daughter came from money and was kidnapped by this Liberation Army, but then she ended up sleeping with them and falling in line with their ideals. But there was a lot of
Was she brainwashed or did she actually fall? in line? That was a little controversy at the time.
Yeah, there was there was a lot of talk about all that kind of stuff. And King thought it was fascinating, and he was writing a book called The House on Value Street. And he said he'd been working on it for about 6 weeks and nothing was coming yet. That title sucks.
Values.
What is it like? Values.com. Exactly.
The House on Dollar Store or something.
Yeah.
But
Take a trip to Best Buy.
so yeah, he was writing about that, and he said that the characters weren't coming alive. He said it just wasn't happening. But but I think he was really drawn to the character of Donald DeFreeze, and then also drawn to just themes of brainwashing versus free will, and the idea of good versus evil, I think, was coming up a lot in those talks. And around the same time, he had, I can't remember how he encountered it. I think he might have seen a video or read something about it. But he saw footage. I remember there in 1968 there was a thing called the Dugway incident, in which nerve gas was deployed in Utah accidentally, and it killed 3,000 sheep. And he talks about seeing, and I think there was he's seen footage. He saw footage of mice being injected with this same kind of nerve gas and twitching and freaking out. And I think that got him thinking about plagues and things. And he also talks about several other books. There's a apocalyptic book that he loved, George R. Stewart's Earth Abides. There's also Richard Matheson's I Am Legend, Robert Merle's Malevil.
Maleville? How do you spell it?
Malevil. I do not know that book. Listeners, if you know that book,
maybe.
let us know about it. Maleficent.
That's what I was thinking about the pronunciation. Maybe.
That's my favorite Angelina Jolie.
Then,
That's what I was going to say.
Neville Shute's On the Beach from 1957 was another one. On the Beach, Night Surf.
And On the Beach, Neil Young's album of the same name is named after that book.
Is it really?
Yeah, and that
Is that book about an apocalyptic? Is the album about the apocalypse?
a little bit, yeah. He talks a lot about Revolution Blues is a song on there about Charles Manson, but in an apocalyptic scenario. He talks about. And actually, you know what? On the Salem's Lot, we actually used the song "Vampire Blues" from that album. I just realized, but that's about oil, people sucking oil leading to the end of the world. I wouldn't say it's straightforwardly about the end of the world, but it's a lot about the Nixon era, and it's a lot about paranoia concerning the end of the world, and was named after that book.
And clearly these ideas had been swimming around in his head because he had written Night Surf several years before. Yeah. So I think the idea of plagues and everything was always something he was interested in. And then I guess all these influences kind of coalesced, and he did he did some free writing exercises, just write, see what comes out, with certain ideas in mind. And I guess it just started happening, and he saw it as this chance to make his own Lord of the Rings. He's like, I always wanted to write a Lord of the Rings that had an American background, and
I did the Dark Tower.
Yeah, I know, right? And so, so then basically, it took him about 2 years to write it, and Doubleday, his publisher, was on his ass being like, we need something now. And that's why Night Shift was released then.
Makes sense.
Because he was basically like, well, let me round up all these old stories. And
I'd like to thank the Doubleday publisher for doing that.
Yeah, I know, seriously. Although Doubleday, tensions were not good with them. Because... So when it took him 2 years to write the book, and he described it as his own his own Vietnam, an endless conflict he sometimes hated and could never seem to finish. And so, yeah.
I mean, and to think this is years before Dino got into the picture and started pressuring him. Hey, Steven, I got a new adaptation in the works.
I wonder, did Dino ever try and get the stand?
I think he might have been behind the Romero directed.
He probably invited him to one of those swanky outdoor parties where everyone's doing, all sorts of things.
Bowls of cocaine.
Yeah, they're looking out over the Intercoastal or something.
Coke nails.
I love too that Dino
take a walk, Steven.
We know Dino's Italian, that he probably had a really thick accent over
yeah.
there. So I was like, Steven, hi, how are you?
He's got a Coppola beard.
Yes.
So
Stephen King's original draft ended up being 1,200 pages, which is, now what the uncut version is. But Doubleday...
I can't stop, won't stop!
The uncircumcised version. But Doubleday's presses at the time could only accommodate 800 pages, which is kind of crazy to think about. So
does that mean he, at that point, had written the longest book ever to be published by Doubleday?
Well, by Doubleday.
Yeah,
sure.
pretty
Those cheapskates.
Although to be fair, there were probably other authors who are publish my book, and they're like, cut 600 pages out or something like that.
Yeah.
And they probably wanted him to cut shit, yeah. So it was so they were kind of huge dicks about it, and they were basically like, cut 400 pages, or we're gonna cut it. You either can do it, or we're gonna do it. That's how it's gonna happen. And he was under contract. It had to happen. So,
by the way, this episode is sponsored by the Doubleday Publishers. You get a great assortment of books.
And their latest release, James Patterson.
James
Patterson's latest. It's highly praised by James Patterson himself.
Yeah,
high praise indeed.
Find it at your local airport.
So King was not happy, and this was the end of his contract with Doubleday, was this book. So he immediately went out. got a new agent and basically demanded a $3.5 million 3-book deal, which he knew they wouldn't take.
I try to do that all the time, and nothing ever comes of it. So
I think he knew that they weren't going to take it. They refused to go over $3 million, so he left Doubleday for New American Library, which was the publisher that was releasing his paperbacks at the time, and so he moved there. And Doubleday, being total dicks, were so pissed that they lost King that they fired King's advocate, the guy who discovered him at Doubleday.
Oh, no
this guy,
way.
Bill Thompson.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Wait, that like
who
makes
probably
no-
made them millions
Yeah.
of dollars in
Makes
like a
no
5-year
sense.
span.
Yeah.
That's like that's like the Bulls like having Michael Jordan and be like this guy that brought him in
Yeah.
is like, hey, get rid of that scout. We
Get
don't want
rid of
any
the
more
guy.
of his talent.
Get rid of that
Like,
guy who brought in probably our most popular asset.
Yeah.
Also, too, now look, I don't fault Doubleday for wanting him to cut some of the stuff as you'll see as we go along. I do think there are certainly things that could be cut.
I
from
think
the
there could
version.
still be cut.
Still, yeah. And so I, unfortunately, none of us have read the cut version recently, so we can't say if it's better. But I do think there's something to be said for wanting those kind of heavy edits. I mean, that's what publishers and editors are for. However, it sounded like Doubleday was kind of maybe like unnecessarily putting its foot down about it. Like maybe going, oh, can we compromise? Can you cut 200 pages from it? It sounds like
400 is a third of the book.
yeah. It sounds like it sounds like they made some ultimatums that.
Also, let's look back at history and have some context. Like this guy was bringing in like millions of dollars.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
That's what I'm saying. He was the most popular
Because
novelist at the time.
he was
Yeah.
really popular by this
Yeah.
point. I mean, it wasn't like Carrie or even
No.
Salem's Lot era.
and he was on fire.
Yeah.
So.
I just don't know why you all find this so surprising, because it seems to me like corporations are known for being reasonable, exercising good practices,
Sure.
making sure to take care of the people who
We're-
work for them, and putting art above all else.
We're just,
My
we're just
understanding
subtly
of the way that
bashing. We're
corporations
subtly bashing
Well,
Doubleday. I
that's
can't
what
believe it.
because they are people, after all.
That's
Yeah.
Like,
That's
people
what-
who need people.
But do you think
We need to
that
save those pages for somebody else too.
would you put a publish? I guess I would. Yeah, I was gonna say, would you put a publishing giant in the same league as a
Yeah.
corporation? But yeah, you would.
I mean,
You
I'm
would.
not saying they're United Airlines, but
Yeah.
yeah, obviously they have a bottom line, and
Yeah.
Hey man, it's all about the green.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's why
Green-
Burke,
there's
It's all about
right.
that paper.
The green cubes.
that's why Burke is the true hero of Aliens.
That's a good point.
That's a bold
I love
statement.
how
Look out for Mike's dissertation
Yeah.
on Burke.
Yeah.
I love how
Hero.
Burke has come up like 4 times on this
what's
podcast.
the
Yeah,
name
yeah.
of it? What's the name of that of the corporation in Portal? Have any of you played?
Oh,
Portal?
no,
I love that game, but I don't remember.
I want to play Portal. I've never
Digital
played it.
something.
That
Whatever.
is-
Listeners, tell us what the corporation in Portal is, and
Because we can't Google it, all of us have just lost our fingers. I don't know. What.
We're all in airplane mode
You
for
should
this
play
podcast.
Portal. It's really good.
It's a fun game.
So
Very
another
fun.
thing I found interesting was King was listening to Christian radio one night, probably just by happenstance, and he heard the line, "Once in every generation, the plague will fall among them," and that was a line that he said was also very inspirational. And then couple that, he probably switched the station to a little bit of Bruce Springsteen, and he heard a little track called Jungle Land, and that's where he got the title from.
And that serves as one of the 3 songs, I think, as the intro to part 1. One of the other one being, of course, Blue Oyster Cult, Stone Fear the Reaper, and the other one being Baby Can You Dig Your Man?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Which
what
I
a
kinda
great
love,
Larry,
yeah.
the great
And-
one-hit wonder himself.
And King has, and we'll talk a lot about Larry, because we love Larry, or some of us. Do we all love Larry?
I think I love
Larry.
Larry.
I love Larry.
Larry's great.
He's interesting.
King even said before the miniseries was written, it's funny because this is the miniseries tie-in edition I have, but he has this intro that was written before the miniseries. He was saying if there was ever a movie of The Stand, he actually pictured Bruce Springsteen when he was writing it, and he pictured him in the role because in the 80s, Bruce was doing live acting, his music videos like in I'm on Fire and Glory Days. But even though those videos can be a little goofy, Bruce is seems like he's got some screen presence, you know. And,
He mentions it in the intro to this edition
Yeah.
too.
Okay, so we
Talks
must
about
have the
Bruce,
same.
and
yeah.
then he name checks
Jeff
my
Goldblum?
second cousin, Marshall Crenshaw.
I did not know you were related to Marshall
Oh, he
Crenshaw
would
until
would
you...
have absolutely no recollection of me. We're not.
And who
Yeah.
is Marshall Crenshaw?
He's a musician and songwriter.
He is career
with great spectacles.
he career wise is I think a little bit more similar to had the plague not happened to where Larry Underwood's career would have gone, you know what I mean? Like it's funny that King pictures Bruce Springsteen, and even in the comic adaptation, which we'll talk about in episode 4, he draws him just like Bruce Springsteen. He looks just like him. But as far as Larry's songs go, I feel like they're more in that vein than I never pictured him as a Springsteen type.
Like that of
rocker.
Marshall Crenshaw.
Yeah, I feel like he was more kind of little more 80s, a little more Blue Eyed Soul kind
You know
of
what's
thing.
crazy is that both Marshall Crenshaw and Patty Hearst, who we mentioned earlier, both appeared on The Adventures of Pete and Pete.
Oh, that's true.
Really?
Isn't
They
that
were
strange?
also both pardoned by Bill Clinton. That's not
Oh
true.
my
This
god.
is
Are you
weird.
serious? Patty
Wait,
Hearst was in Pete
no.
and Pete?
Patty Hearst in the episode where Pete sells the house. She's the wife of in the family that moves in.
Man, they had the weirdest
Yeah.
guest stars.
They also had Michael Stipe, and they also had Debbie Harry.
Captain Slim.
Iggy Pop.
Iggy
right?
Pop,
Iggy
yeah.
Pop was also in there.
Stevie Buscemi.
Great cast.
Iggy Pop would have been a great trash can man.
He would have actually
He would have been, yeah.
Man, wait a second.
I think Bruce Springsteen could still play Larry now.
The way know what's
Yeah.
funny though, the way he draws him, or the way Robert Perkins or Mike Perkins, whoever draws the comic draws him. He draws Larry looking young, like in his 20s, 30s, but style-wise, he
It
looks
looks
like
more like now.
now Bruce Springsteen
Yeah.
with the short hair,
The
black
vest
jacket,
and the
He
black.
probably had like magic on copy or something like that when he was
Yeah.
drawing.
Love
them.
magic.
gypsy
Love
biker.
it. Yeah.
But can you? I promise I won't go off on too long this tangent. Just think about Patty Hearst. So you're on Pete and Pete. Why Jay Mascis is on that show? So
Yeah,
if you're
yeah.
like the young actors and you're asking them like, oh, you're Jay Mascis, like, oh, cool, you're in a band, Dinosaur Jr. Oh, you're like, cool. Oh, cool, you got abducted by Donald DeFreeze and got your brainwashed and participate. Like, what a weird like person
Hey.
to connect with a bunch of kids.
And that was a Nickelodeon show, which is getting
Yeah,
better.
really.
I know, that was the thing. I didn't know who any of those people were when I was
Oh,
a
no.
kid.
No,
Yeah.
yeah.
I barely knew who Michael Stipe
I just
was.
wonder
Yeah.
if like the day she was on set, if it was kind of like,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I guess that gives us, that kind of leads us to the book itself. Let's talk about what we like to call the hook.
Ah, yes. Don't you see? Don't you see how clear it all is? Not only can you see the future, I can change it. You can change it, exactly.
This is where we like to talk about themes and sort of what is the central driving force of the book. What is with King, there's usually always one thing that you can latch onto is sort of the fear that's being exploited. And here it's the big one. It's the apocalypse.
Yeah.
99.4% of the population is wiped out by a super flu, a government-created virus that some people call Captain Trips. So, what would you guys like? How would you say that the apocalypse manifests here differently than in other books about the apocalypse? Maybe.
Oh, I think a lot of it is it's so much about the corruption of power.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like this is all, despite the fact that Flag at some point says it could have been anything else that set the actions in motion. It really does go back to this all came from it was like a man-made thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, this was developed at Project Blue. Like this was this was an actual thing that was created by the very people that are in this country, and I think that obviously as we just learned with what King was studying at the time, like I think a lot of it, there is a lot of commentary on just mass military, the military industrial complex, and also just the I think corruption is big. I mean, because obviously this boils down to a good versus evil template, and I think by taking on America, which has always seen itself as being this do-gooder across the world, and being like, no, they're actually responsible for the end of this kind of. At the time, especially when it was released in the 70s, I think cynicism for America really started reaching its not its peak, because now we're at peak cynicism of this country. But at the time, you got to think with Nixon, it just happened with Vietnam. There is a lot of distrust in America, and I think by him framing Captain Trips as being born out of that, basically made an interesting concept of what evil could be. Because evil's transmutative. It could become anything. It's not just this, devil with horns, as we learned with Randall Flagg. So I think I think by having it come from America is a very interesting perspective here.
Well, two things. This book came out in '78, and this would have been right in the middle of the Carter administration, who I would have assumed King would have voted for.
Absolutely.
Liberal. So it wasn't like if it had come out during the Nixon administration, it would have made a little more sense about the cynicism towards the government.
Well, no, but at the time you still had,
you still had, because you had the Hoss situation and the whole gasoline issue going on too.
I think the ideas had probably been
before '76.
during
That's true.
the Nixon
And
administration.
people compare Randall Flagg to Nixon a lot.
Really?
Honestly, yeah, I've read that in several things, like the idea of promising power, wanting power, but ultimately not being able to offer.
Who's more handsome though?
Flagg.
He's
Well, if we're going by Jamie Sheridan.
Yeah, by Jamie Sheridan standards, absolutely.
Big old.
And so, yeah, I think that what you're saying, Mike, and what you guys are saying is really prevalent in book one, especially. Like, that's where we really get a glimpse into the military world. And
Well, the other angle I found interesting, because you talked about how I Am Legend influenced him on this book, and then you look at famous, like the Mad Max series, for instance, about this post-apocalyptic world. But this is actually about the apocalypse itself. This is about how it all falls apart, and I found that to be, for me, the first 500 pages are the best 500 pages. The first 500 pages are the best King has probably ever done.
Which roughly represents the entirety of book one.
Exactly. One, and also too, I mean, I was talking the other day to someone about this. When I was younger, I remember being so freaked. Then the miniseries came out, and then Outbreak came out, and I remember being so freaked out
Outbreak is terrifying.
by this idea of, like you guys said, not just people creating the disease, but the people who are supposed to protect the rest of us.
Yeah.
And I remember being really getting disturbed by it. My dad had to kind of assure me, like, no, that doesn't happen. They mentioned the book. They signed the Geneva Conventions, all this stuff. Now, look, for all we know, maybe the government is abiding by the Geneva Conventions, and they're not developing any of this kind of stuff. But I don't believe that.
Cue laugh track.
Yeah, exactly. And so anyway, but I remember my dad. No, and my dad may have the same thought I have now in his head. He may have been like, well, the world's a scary place, but I'm not going to tell my 9-year-old kid about this stuff. I remember him like assuring me of that. And that worked for, I'm 32 now, so that worked for like 20-something years. And rereading this book, though, and I don't know if it's just because of the current political climate we're in, and there's a lot of tension regarding that, which we talk about a lot in this podcast. Rereading it, though, man, book one just scared the hell out of me because he does such a good, I mean, on top of all the great character stuff that we'll get to, it's different from the other two books in that it is just about the breakdown of society, and he does it in such an elaborate fashion. Like even with the military, once things start going wrong, you have some military people that like Starkey and Creighton who are trying to uphold this level of secrecy to the point where they're killing people to keep this from leaking that the army did it.
Yeah.
Then you have other soldiers who are like rebelling. Then you have other ones who are just going completely nuts and just like kind of a slash and burn method. And that just scared the hell out of me. I'm like, man, if something like this proportion happened, who would we turn to? And I don't know the answer.
Well, God, there are like 9 different things that I want to say in response to that, which is the mark of a good book, right?
Yeah, you got time.
So first, I obviously am reading for the first time, and I've been thinking a lot about that too. And one of the things that's unsettling now, reading it now, is this is the first time that I felt like the American government is run so ineptly that there could actually be a secret military coup, right? Like, I really appreciate that Starkey and Creighton, and they're obviously doing the wrong thing, but they're sympathetic characters.
Yeah. Yes.
You understand their perspective. It's not that they are trying to devalue human life. It's that they have this belief in the importance of this institution, and it's all really, really well written. And they're also obviously wrong.
Yeah.
But the way that they talk about the president being basically a useless sack of shit, if I'd read this at any other time in my life, I don't know that I would have had this reaction.
Yeah.
I was like, God, if something like this happened, I mean, I certainly wouldn't want the military to be the apparatus making the decisions, but I wouldn't want it to be our president either.
Yeah.
So it's just like, damn if you do, damn if you don't. The other thing is, when I started reading this, I just wasn't thinking about the year it was written, and I assumed that it was in response to the AIDS crisis.
Yeah.
It's not.
Pre,
Right? AIDS was first identified in the U.S. in like 1981.
Yeah.
So it wasn't, but the theories around AIDS being created by the government and fed into the population to get rid of poor black people.
Yeah.
It's interesting to compare.
Wait, and do you guys think? I mean, the military and the government kind of conspiracy stuff aside. I mean, it's not a conspiracy because in The Stand we find out it's like all real.
Right.
It's funny that the first book focuses so much on that, and like I said, the breakdown of society and our systems failing us. I guess like thematically or hook wise, like, do you guys feel like what else is there with like maybe the non-military characters, I don't know, or like the non-military events? Like, what other themes?
Like, I think one of the themes that I really am drawn to is. I love the way that King really explores, he does this in so many ways, but just to focus in, the sense of not really understanding the weight and magnitude of the people being gone, of people being dead. Larry's, in book one, Larry's journey really resonates with me because it's all about him like realizing that he's alone.
Yeah.
And like the way he clings to Rita, and we'll talk more about Rita later because I really want to talk about her. But man, I was just rereading the chapter after she dies, and he's just on his own, and then he crashes his bike.
Solitude being a hook in itself.
Yeah, and like talking about, I could have cracked my head open and laid here and nobody would have come and I would have died. Like, and then he drives like, you know, at a snail's pace on his bike because he's so scared because he's realizing I could very well be like, you know, one of the last, it's like, he knows, he's like, I'm one of the last people left alive on Earth, and I don't think that, you know, the crushing loneliness and the weight of solitude and all of that stuff, the way it hammers into him, and it puts everything into perspective before his relationship with Rita and how he took her for granted in so many ways. Like, once he's finally alone, the way that King writes that, it like, and you see that with all the characters, Franny too, like the way she clings to Harold in a way, just because like she just buried her father, she needs someone there, you know.
Well, I think also it stresses the trivialities of life. Like, I mean, especially with Fran, like the relationship with her mother, it just shows just how petty things can really destroy, like how useless and meaningless they are. I mean, like you read that chapter with her and her mother is just terrifying, like a psycho. And Franny's just been beaten like to a pulp because just her mother harbors all these like awful feelings because Freddie died and all these other things. But and then when you actually get past it and she's on her own, you just realize like just how pathetic all those arguments were, because it's just like, well, now they're gone, and that was literally the last thing that happened between, you know, me and my mom, blah, blah, blah. And like, so it's that stuff that like for her character that really like hit me pretty hard, because you just, you know, we think, you know, when you're in life and you're not thinking about everything being gone, these little things do seem like the larger than life problems, and they are, because the people that you love like have these really strong coarse feelings about you, and you think like, oh, that's the end of the world, but it's really not. And, like, and it's like, and then when it's gone, you're like, oh fuck, well, we wasted all this time doing all these things. And for me, especially in the Trump age right now, where I'm like not really talking to my dad especially, and like seeing like, and how like you know, I look back and go, wow, 6 months have gone by and I really haven't really talked that much, like, or you know, 4 or 5 months have gone by and I haven't really talked. And I read, you know, reading that, like the chapter of Franny, like that definitely did like, oh, well, you know,
is it worth it?
Yeah, is it worth it? Exactly. You know.
For me, with book one, what's so strong is that obviously I hope that we all never have to go through a plague.
Well, I'm going to be immune anyway, so.
Oh, you'll be fine. I'll be one of the 0.8% whatever it is.
Yeah.
But there's nothing really supernatural at all in book one. We don't meet Randall. Well, there's some dreams, and we don't meet Randall Flagg until.
No, he's in it.
He's
in it.
Yeah.
And the only point is it's and he says that he could tell that the world is, or the narrator says he could tell the world is going to change because he could do magic, and then he levitates himself off the ground.
And that's about it.
And that's it.
Well, I'm saying, that's it. And he doesn't show up to, I think, chapter 23 or something like that. And he's gone.
Because there's not even a lot of biblical references.
But that's the thing you talked about. Like, the most frightening thing is obviously when you get down to the end of the book, we aren't going to spoil too much now. Literally good versus evil. Right? That's the ultimate crux of the book. But again, the feeling that they don't know all the scientific facts.
Yeah.
So when Larry is wandering around New York after Rita, maybe he is the last man on Earth. He doesn't know. And Franny's driving with Harold. She clings to Harold, not because she likes Harold necessarily. They establish that pretty well in the book. But this might be the only other human left. Like, what's the risk? You know, like you said, like, is it worth going on my own if I'm never going to find anybody?
Yeah.
And that fear of having, like, the great isolation. It reminds me of the Where's Everybody Twilight Zone episode. Where this man's just walking around this town convinced that there's somebody there, and there's nobody there, and it's just that freaks me out more than anything.
It's funny too, because we talk, you know, whenever we do the Hook section, like we did for The Shining or Sam's Lot or whatever, there's always like the big obvious thing that's the draw, like you said, like the plague. Okay, plague wipes out the population, and a huge part of the Stan's horror is obviously, he goes into these physical details of people getting sick, and whenever he does this like throughout the whole first book. He'll have this great character he introduces talking to someone, then he just has them like sneeze at the end.
Yeah.
Okay, they're dead. Yeah. And that is scary.
That's when his foreshadowing just comes in great.
It's so heartbreaking, and that is certainly, I think, like the most surface level, obvious, great hook about this book. But what I love about King's work is that, like you guys are saying, once you get into it, you're like, oh, there are other scary elements of this, like the system's failing in the military, and
the suppression of the
solitude.
press.
The suppression of the
Which
press.
really
Which-
hit hard because when we were
yeah.
reading this was all when all this stuff was going down. I mean, it's still going down.
The
but
press
really,
conferences and whatnot.
Well,
fake news.
you know, I started reading this around shortly after the inauguration, and when we were actually seeing like him saying, "Oh yeah, the fake news thing," and like, "Oh, the failing New York Times," and all this other stuff, and I was like, you know, maybe when I read this about 10, 15 years ago, none of that stuff, all that stuff feels so sensationalized because the press was such a, there's a celebration of the press in a sense, but now it's just like they've been kicked to the dirt by our administration. So when you read this, it does hit home. Like, I mean, all those chapters about them like gunning down like, the photographers and the press members. I'm walking home and just being like, Jesus Christ, like I don't need to read this right now.
The one that gets me is the radio host.
Yeah,
Ray
Flowers.
Flowers. Whew, that really. I will admit that particular chapter, which I'm sure we'll talk about more later, all of the examples are good, but having like 9 of them in a row is a bit,
yes.
a bit much. But that was the one that really, when ordinary people, rise to an occasion in spite of the knowledge of their own death. Like, he obviously knows that's what's going to happen, and locks the door and all of that. And one assumes his show was like, hey, let's talk about what's going on in your morning!
Yeah.
And then it becomes this other thing.
And then it's funny because then those soldiers, and this isn't in the movie, but they rebel against the guy who shoots Ray.
Yeah.
And then they start crying. It's like, oh my God,
it's over.
Yeah.
At that point.
The thing that it made me think of, and it's so minor, and it's a news outlet that I do not revere, but every time one of these media organizations found a way to like rise up, it made me think of those banner headlines that CNN does where it says like, Trump claims 3 million undocumented voted in California.
Yeah.
He's not saying the truth, or that's not true, or Trump claims he won however many electoral votes. He didn't. And it's always that parenthetical at the end, and it's not just funny, shady. Like, it's
true.
Public service. It's important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's CNN.
I know.
Like, what? Where are we?
Well, I mean, that whole report of they have this huge, editorial that kind of harkens back to like how he did his format for Kerry, where they list like the LA Times has like that whole,
the front page
the front page spread about like the truth about Captain Trips and like the government that's suppressing things. And I gotta be honest, like this book has never felt more prescient.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's just.
And what's funny about that is, I mean, the military and the government in this book, they start to try to blame other countries for the virus.
What, to the point where they actually released the other virus
in like Europe, yeah.
Like, and that's what's always funny because when I was younger, I always thought like, oh, everything's fine in the rest of the world because I think I don't because it's kind of subtle.
It's very
subtle.
It's touched over
because it's a code name, right?
Yeah.
To do this thing, and now you're like, oh no, they wipe out the rest of the world, which also brings up. I always wonder, like, is there another stand to be written that happened in, like, Czechoslovakia or something, I think that could be cool.
Well, and presumably the virus spread, right, because they didn't know to stop people from getting on airplanes.
That's true, too. But I wonder if, like, how many overseas survivors there are. Because in a weird way, although the stand is this sprawling epic, it is still very localized. I mean, America is only a small part of the world, and it's... and then eventually we boil down to these 2 locations, and Glenn Bateman says this at one point, like, aside from Boulder and Las Vegas, where which are the camps everyone's kind of drawn to in the wake of this, there have to be like other isolated people throughout.
And there are, which is part of the plague chapter is like that we get to see, and conceivably night surf.
Exactly. Yeah,
and that's what's always been interesting to me about this book is that the kind of corollary events that are happening, because it's like I imagine the majority of the survivors are seeing, the dreams by, Flagg or Abigail. But one of the things I was thinking about while reading this is, well, would I be drawn to the dreams, or I just think it's hubbub? Because what if you actually were the only one in your town, which clearly, what if Franny didn't know Harold? They might not actually encountered each other, and she might have just thought that she had like these kind of crazy lucid dreams. Like if you didn't have someone else to be like, hey, I have those dreams also. They're kind of just wandering around.
Like clearly, Tom Cullen wasn't going to go anywhere.
Yeah. Oh no.
Well, he was afraid to leave the town. We'll get there in the next book. But another theme for me, I think that's really interesting is the idea of creating a new, in the apocalypse, you become a new person.
Yeah.
Like when everybody's gone, you are allowed to reinvent yourself because nobody's, you don't have to worry about money. You don't have to worry about relationships and family and status and all this stuff because, you're untethered. And I think that's a theme we see throughout a lot too. In Larry's character and Harold's character, we see people like reinventing themselves in the apocalypse. And I think we see sort of a beautiful, like one of the main stories I love in book 1 is Nick Andros' whole journey. Just showing up in this small town in Arkansas, getting the shit kicked out of him, but then finding a community that he cares about and people he cares about and a job.
And that's pre-plague.
Yeah, pre-plague.
And that's just a sheriff and his wife and a doctor, really.
By hours.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so short and contained, but it tells such a lovely story about this guy, this wanderer who is just exploring the world looking for meaning, and he gets this job out of nowhere, and that's because of the plague. But but he gets this job and seems to be building a new life for himself in that town, and the plague sort of ruins that, And it's like, but in a way, you were seeing somebody find their purpose, after wandering and then losing it so quickly again and then having to find this other purpose, And
I was really caught up in paying attention to who actually finds time or makes space for that sort of process. Like, particularly thinking about the contrast between Nick taking the time to dress Jane, is that her name? Sheriff's wife?
Yeah, Jane Baker.
Dress her in the dress she wore on her honeymoon and carry her body to the Undertaker and making all of this time. And Franny just not knowing what the fuck, like, how long do I have before the body starts to smell? I found that really compelling because sometimes you just don't actually have time to make space for these enormous feelings. And in a scenario like this, there's a chance
sometimes you don't even have the emotional capacity. Like, doesn't Larry leave Rita's body in the tent?
Yeah. What I thought was a really, really nice contrast was you buck the stereotypes because you have a pregnant Franny who's planning on raising the baby without what's her loser boy?
Jess.
Name?
Love Jess Ryder.
Young Jess Ryder, and you having her. Granted, she doesn't want the body to start decomposing and have to deal with that. But the fact that she takes the time, pregnant, is the apocalypse, to essentially lift her father and take him down the stairs, take him out to the grave that she dug herself and bury him. And you've got, the stereotypical you figure like, the man will take care of his mother. And Larry, all he can do, he takes her to a hospital, and like we were talking about before this, and leaves her behind with a note.
Yeah.
And it's just I thought that was a really nice. Those were really great character beats that he gave both those characters in those small chapters in book 1.
Yeah.
Well, we kind of just touched upon this as the state of being and like the state of mind, and I think Franny's chapter, although she does like rush and get the body out there and bury her father in his garden, she is not like on like Earth at that moment.
Yeah.
I mean, what's great about that chapter, and we're going to talk about this in a second with regards to structure and format, is that because King relies so much on point of view and like gets us into the eyes of the different character, we actually see her like going from like talking about the strawberry pie
flies,
to
eyes.
the flies to the knives to not even realizing that she's almost burning down her house. And that just lets you know like. Yeah, she's grieving, but it's more shock than anything because she hasn't had any time. Like,
and
what
she's
you're saying,
fixated on rhyming. Like she realizes that all of her thoughts are rhyming, and she doesn't know why.
And that's honestly like, if I was going to talk about like the strongest writing in this book, definitely comes into that idea of that King really knows how to write the point of view of characters in this book, and especially that is proven through grief.
Yeah,
for sure.
Well, he captures like.
You see how he wrestles. Everyone wrestles different things, but it never is so like explicit. It's very inferred and it's very like subtle, and that for me while reading this, it felt very real. And like I think that speaks obviously to his writing.
Yeah, and I think like the most potent expression of grief because it's rooted in something so complicated. I mean, Harold is only 16 years old. And he hated his older sister. Yeah. He felt like he was unappreciated by his parents and everyone. And, part of him, like he says, he's like, part of him was glad that all the kids who made fun of him died and he's still alive and everything. But then you have that moment where Franny comes to his house and he's out there mowing the lawn in a Speedo sobbing. It's like, he's doing this thing that he probably did for his parents that they made him do, and he's like doing it, and he's out there because he's like, I have to maintain some semblance of normality, and just that moment where it's like he was so openly grieving on his own, and the moment Franny saw him, he runs. I mean, also he's almost naked, but he like runs because he's like, I can't let somebody see me this way.
If you think about all the main characters in this book, and it's funny because I didn't realize this until this time I've read it. There are really only 5 characters that we are with completely before the play, or I guess right as the play starts in book 1, and then afterwards, and that is Franny, Stu, Nick, Larry, and Lloyd. Because even Harold, like, we don't meet Harold until after everyone's dead.
So and that's through Franny.
Exactly.
Franny.
And so you have all these characters, and I think maybe with the exception of Nick, but the rest of them, they all sort of have this like fugue state they get into as this goes on, because Larry has, after Rita's death, and even before that in the tunnel, and then after Rita's death, he's just kind of wandering around not knowing what's going on. Franny we just talked about. Stu is captured by
his situation is different,
but he's still like, even in that like escaping the hospital, it's just this like panic, and a lot of that comes from the situations they're in, of course. I mean, Lloyd also, you see him in the prison, which actually isn't, that's more in book 2, but this
actually that's all book 1.
Is that book 1?
Flag lets him out at the end
of
book 1.
So he's going nuts. So they're all going crazy just from this immediate situation they're in. But then if you also like pile onto that, so like they have, like you said, they have time, like the luxury of grief, but then you pile onto that the fact that literally, except for Franny and Harold who know each other, still everyone you know is wiped out.
Yeah.
Like, can you imagine? Like, I kept thinking about that. Like, and it's funny. I love how like when we're all thinking about this stand, we all think of ourselves as being one of the immune ones when we're out, and like, we probably did.
No, we'd probably be dead.
Oh, I'm cannon fodder. I'm a total racist. Are you kidding?
That actually,
I'm going to Vegas.
That actually makes for a great transition to our next section, where we're going to talk about structure and format.
Look at me. Look at me, teacher. Look.
I think all 3 books are actually structured very differently, and what you just said about how we kind of are limited to the perspectives of a very select group of characters in the first book, I think that is, I think the first book, we focus on those main characters, but then when we break from them, we're usually looking at a larger look, like a series of vignettes about the world.
I should say characters that live, because like obviously we see Starkey and Creighton and some of the Arnett people, but they're all dead. Well, Creighton you never know, but the rest.
Well, Starkey, and we'll talk about that because that stuff's good. But.
Well, what I would say is the core difference in terms of structure and format and just writing in general from book 1, from book 2 and 3, is that this appears to be more showing versus telling.
Yes.
Because we don't have like Glenn Bateman. I mean, he doesn't show up until the very end of this chapter. Or this book. And then, we don't really we're not going through like Mother Abigail's like 108 years of history.
Oh boy.
We're just kind of like tossed into the point of views. And so we're kind of just seeing what they see.
Vignettes is a good word.
Yeah, vignettes is a perfect way.
Well, and you also don't realize until somebody coughs or sneezes, or in other cases, just until they take action, that you're spending time with a character who's just going to go away.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I think by focusing so much on the character perspectives and then yanking those characters out so mercilessly, it does a much better job of creating the world and doing world building than just narration could ever do.
Yeah.
Like, speaking of Starkey, when he goes to the fucking soup room, that's incredible, but you don't actually, you know that this is an end of some sort, but you don't really know how or why, and there's no indication, having read it for the first time, that that's a character that's just going to go away.
Yeah. Because he never gets sick. He may have been immune. We don't know.
No, he'd obviously been hunkered down, and you have no idea if he would actually catch it. There's no sneeze, there's no cough. He just puts a bullet in his brain.
Well, it's the aspect of, because he's still separate from everything happening, because he sees that person with their head in the soup, and slowly but surely, it represents him losing his mind in a way. Because he desperately wants to take that head out of that soup, and so when he goes down there finally, that's it.
We'll call it soup cake.
No.
It's the fucking grossest thing.
Because there's nothing sexy about it at all.
But there's a lot of patience that King has here.
Yeah.
He Starkey's not even introduced until 33 pages in. I mean, he doesn't. The virus isn't, even titled until even I think for even further than that. And so there is like he lets the details kind of draw itself out. Obviously, Doubleday wasn't a big fan of that, but
thanks, Doubleday.
Thanks. But I think that patience is key for this book specifically because it's so much world building. And I mean, honestly, by the end of this, even though I would say even halfway through, it felt so lived into me. Like I totally believed like every situation in every setting that I was being thrown into, because we're really, I mean, Salem's Lot was a big, world building novel, but like not to this degree.
No.
I mean,
that was town building.
Yeah,
this
town
is
building.
This is country building.
I mean, it's crazy.
It actually feels a little bit like a really great showcase for King's abilities as a short story writer.
Yeah.
Because so many of these could stand alone and be really compelling.
Yes.
Whether or not the character reappears. I just, you could take that Starkey chapter out, put it somewhere else, and you would know everything that he gets fired, you would find out about the sickness. And
it's funny because if you took that Starkey's death, if you took that and isolated it as its own short story, you would even get. I mean, it would be the best kind of short story because he goes into the bunker, and you would almost get the disease revealed for you because he goes into all these dead people. He describes how sick they look. He finds that note that said,
I have it written down.
What is it?
Now you know it works. Any questions?
Exactly. So that would be the reveal, and that is so. It's funny. You really could do that with probably most of the chapters, and the big structural difference between book 1 and books 2 and 3, and this was actually a bit of a challenge for me once I got to books 2 and 3 this time around. Is book 1? I mean, all the chapters and the sub chapters, they are so short.
Yes.
And it's just and King keeps if he had a camera, it's kind of zooming out in the country. Yeah. He'll do these chapters where he kind of goes throughout all these different towns. He'll zoom in even further, and he doesn't do that the rest of the book. The rest of the book is 50-page sprawling chapter on Larry, 50-page sprawling chapter on.
But you got to pay attention to all of it too, because he has great callbacks. Like for example, when you hear about the power station that exploded, and then you find out later on that actually Flag was there, with the people to kind of
that's right,
which is kind of interesting. And it's I love. He has so much fun with that. I mean, he even has. It kind of gets a little too much fun because there's I think there's at one point where somebody mentions strawberry pie or something, and then it cuts to the next chapter.
It's strawberry rhubarb pie and then strawberry pie.
It's where Larry makes it for Rita, and then it cuts to Franny. It's a little on the nose.
And I love that in the sense. And then he gets playful also. I think at one point I think Franny says well, it could be worse than being in a tunnel with ghouls or something like that. And then it obviously is harkening back to the Larry thing.
What was our last ranked story for Night Shift? I don't remember what was dead last.
Sometimes they come back.
So I want us to. I'll go to wethepeople.org. I'm going to start. It'll be dead. The site's going to be gone in 15 minutes. But I'm going to go to wethepeople.org and I'm going to start a petition to replace. Sometimes they come back with just the Starkey's death chapter. Night Shift, and then Night Shift will be a perfect book.
What would we call it? Starkey's Last Soup or something like that?
Oh no!
But even at a micro level, his short stories are great. I know that these were cut from, or these actually just weren't in the original.
Which is crazy to me because we'll get to the graveyard
chapters.
because the plague chapters for me are
but there's a lot of short stories in that also.
Basically what we're referring to, there's kind of two chapters that really stand out to me
toward the end
as of book 1 as a series of vignettes that paint a larger portrait. I know there's more, but there's two main ones that I'm thinking of, and one is sort of what we discussed earlier with Ray Flowers, the radio DJ, basically all the different ways that there's military coups happening, there's rebellions happening, and then the other, and we'll talk more in detail. Is there?
So it's just like the book, or how it's aligned. It's there are 3 of them. I think there's one on page 83, which basically shows how the people first get it, and then 251 is mostly it's a lot about how the people are dying, but then also the press that's involved in that, and then 425 is great because that's just how the people that did survive.
Which is
it's the after the fall.
I guess I actually had a listener reach out to me on Twitter and ask me. He's like, "Are you guys going to talk about how the vignettes kind of work to paint a larger portrait of the world?" And I was like, absolutely. And another thing that stands out to me about them, we were talking about short fiction, but what I love about those little bits in the vignette chapters, they're like works of flash fiction because they're usually like a page long.
Yeah.
But he develops so much character. Like the one about the woman who is so afraid to leave and she finds a gun in the basement and then like she runs out and immediately just starts like tries to shoot one of the guys on the street and then the gun explodes and it kills her. Like that is such a short little bit and I have so much. Like I understand that character.
What's
It's
the
like
line?
a Canterbury Tale.
Oh,
Like,
No Great Loss.
Like,
Yeah, and No Great Loss becomes this. That I mean, that's
a
almost like
mantra.
a microstructure itself. Yeah.
So two things. What I loved about the vignettes is they reminded me of my favorite sections in Salem's Lot.
Yeah.
Where they would just kind of go, after you're introduced to Ben Mears and Susan and everybody else, every once in a while you have those chapters where, and here's what happened at the town overnight.
Yeah.
And then slowly but surely the town disappears. And so you've got these bursts in here. But what sticks out to me the most in these vignettes is there's during one of the, the military's going crazy and they're killing everybody. And one of the agents is on the and then one of the agents is on the phone, and he just says out of nowhere, "Things fall apart. The center does not hold."
Yeah.
And then they ask him repeat that, and he goes, "Nothing."
Yeah.
And that's the book.
Yeah.
Right there.
It's a great Roots album.
Yeah.
Things
It's also
Things Fall Apart.
It's also a good Chinua Achebe novel, which is the original source of that.
Well,
guy's
and it's
story.
a great Yates poem.
Yeah.
That's actually probably.
But wait,
order.
is the Second Coming is the poem? Great Sopranos episode, by the way.
Yeah.
But is the line "Things Fall Apart" from Yeats' the?
It's in that Starkey chapter.
Touche.
Yeah.
I thought it was from a Chubby Checker song.
Yeah. I got really excited.
You know what it
I actually
made?
like checkers though.
A lot of those vignette chapters made me think of actually was Slaughterhouse 5.
Yeah.
And the like constant refrain of "so it goes,"
The bursts.
where it's like a pencil breaks and that's "so it goes," and then an entire town of people dies and that's "so it goes."
Yeah.
Because deaths are sort of equal.
No Great Loss.
Well, he does.
Totally.
He does start to, and this goes away a little bit as well, not completely, but it goes away a little bit in Book 2 and 3. Because of the structure, the kind of constant zooming in and zooming out, and showing both the micro and macro levels of tragedy, more or less. It's weird because King, in my opinion, is one of the most compassionate writers in terms of like how he sympathizes with his characters and humanity in general, and he seems like just a writer has an incredibly big heart. But what I love in these chapters is that he also, like the No Great Loss or whatever it is, he gets very clinical about how people are dying. Because I think you have to when you're writing about the apocalypse and you have this whole first book, which is as long as like a normal book would
Absolutely.
be, like dedicated to how the world ends. You do have to like. You can't have this like overwhelming amount of sympathy for every single minor character.
The vignettes are written, like you said, very clinical, very sterile style. Like he's literally just reporting the news.
Yeah,
you know?
no, that's a great way to put it. I mean, the one that haunted me, really haunted me, is I mean, they all that means probably one of my favorite chapters in the book is the guy who started going running to get his cholesterol down, and he talks about he had like
Well, he wanted to die. Though.
and then because he was raised Catholic, he couldn't, because he lost his wife and kids.
Yeah.
He couldn't bring himself to like kill himself, so he essentially runs himself to death.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, subconsciously, I guess, but and it talks about how he's actually like in a good mood when he dies, then because he's so like, thank God.
Well, because if you
thank
commit
God.
suicide, according to the Catholics, according to Dante's Inferno, you become a tree that continues to be chopped by.
That's kind of
a bunch
nice.
of people. Yeah, well,
You
if
could
you're
be
in
a
hell,
tree.
I'd rather be a tree
Mike,
than.
would you recommend Catholic school for any parents out there?
Absolutely, it's a great experience. I mean, I particularly loved my first year when our headmaster had to be transferred by the Archdiocese of Miami because he had tried to pick up a former student in one of the parks in our town because he was trying to get some. So
Hot as hell.
Well,
really hot. Yeah, he was a great guy. Principal Heller, good guy.
Principal Holleran?
Heller.
Oh, I think you said Holleran.
Dick Holleran?
Dick
Dick
Holleran.
Haller is Mike's Catholic
Oh,
school
boy.
principal.
Yeah, like, but the other one that sticks with me, like you guys just mentioned it, but the woman who goes in the freezer,
Yes.
like,
Yes.
Oh,
and then she like
That
slowly-
is very cancerous.
Freezing to death in the
So,
apocalypse.
Like,
that is horrifying. Like the idea of like dying in such a torturous way.
Yeah.
Like I don't know.
well,
And
she's
then-
an
and
awful
then-
person, though.
Yeah, I know.
So-
And then the little girl who falls in the well, and then nobody can save her. It's like
Well, the bicycle.
Yeah.
The bike. Yeah.
it's all those are so good.
We go on and on about.
When I know
Catholic
when I was a kid, going back to sort of like the rebellion sort of chapter in a way, or like the well, the destruction of the media and of the people, but also the rebellion of the people. Like, I think we all sort of read this when we were young, and there was something really shocking about the chapter where the guys show up in loincloths at a news station and just start shooting everybody. And like, how did that chapter resonate as
Here's the thing.
I'm saying because we read this when we were kids.
Yeah.
So like that's such a like reading it now, it actually is a really ugly. Kind of horrible chapter for me in a lot of ways.
Justin, you go first, but I think we all
for
have
me,
some thoughts.
it's very. Did they have to be in loincloths? Like that.
Well, he makes a point to say that they're all black, and I guess there would be.
We read it this morning.
It's the Negroid,
to me,
it's a '70s trope that he keeps bringing up, like Negroid lips and things like that.
On a like a removed intellectual level, it was a good reminder for me that even the most progressive figures in our culture can, without realizing it, be reinforcing or fall victim to incredibly damaging stereotypes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's not that in a post-apocalyptic future that people of all races wouldn't turn into monsters, because they would, right?
Yeah.
Like there would be monster. It would it's the perfect future. Monsters of every race, color, and creed. But it's the only time race is fucking specified in all of book one, anyway. And then it's like black with surprisingly straight white teeth. And the loincloths and grinning and their bodies are huge.
It stands out because again, if
was this in the original or was this added?
That's the thing, because a lot of this stuff was added back into the uncut version. I don't know if this particular instance was, but a lot of the shorts that we're talking about, the bursts, were not in the 78 version.
It's also kind of a problem when you have no black characters.
That's the point. If there was a bunch,
because so far there is absolutely nothing in here that means that I can't imagine Franny, for example, as being any skin color. Right?
Which is that's
there's nothing that says otherwise.
But when he specifies it,
right?
He fetishizes it.
Yeah,
That's
totally.
Mother Abigail. Yeah.
It's just
and also the tone changes.
The tone changes.
The way they say things, and the dialect, and it's so very.
And that's something, honestly, and that's something in terms of the dialect. That's something that, if we're being honest, Randall and I can definitely test. You can too, Dan. It haunts King to this day, just in terms of even the Mr. Mercedes book.
And
the young African American kid.
Mr. Mercedes, it's funny because
they try to say, oh, this is supposed to be.
Trying to be self-aware.
The problem is in Mr. Mercedes, he had, what's that character's name?
Jerome.
Jerome.
The
Jerome. problem is that I like that in Mr. Mercedes he just has a character who happens to be black and is in an Ivy League school and whatever, and that's great. And he does not, for the most part, does not write Jerome in this vernacular that he kind of
But he has another
clings
character.
to. Exactly. So the problem is he. I almost feel like he's trying to atone for how he wrote black characters in the 70s with Jerome. But instead of just letting it be oh cool, he has
and because the kid Jerome's really, really smart.
He's a great character.
The go-to
but then he has him drop into this alter ego where Jerome takes on this purposely Amos and Andy kind of black, you're so messed up, blah blah blah.
And Bill Hodges does it too.
And I think that's King's way of trying to atone for it and be no, look, I'm making fun of that, and we've talked about this every episode. I don't for one second think that Stephen King is a racist guy.
No.
He's always been very progressive.
I think he's an old guy.
And he does this. He does the same thing with gay people sometimes too. He has
women.
He has a. I just read The Bizarre Bad Dreams, and there's this story about a car that eats people. That's not Christine. Anyway, we'll get to that later. But he has a gay character in it. And rather than just having a woman who happens to be gay, or just not mentioning her sexuality at all, because what doesn't matter really, he makes her just this butch lesbian who has all these horses. And yes,
of course,
there are lesbians who like to dress. In quotes traditionally like men or whatever else. It's not to say that there are not women who dress a certain way or cut their hair a certain way or whatever else, but he just doubles down sometimes on
it's a forced way to illustrate the point.
He's trying to show how sympathetic he's no, I'm being diverse, but he draws such attention to it sometimes that it becomes a little troubling. And with The Stand, with that, going back to that radio or the news station sequence. And once again, I don't even have a problem in the book with there being different racial factions that start going against each other, because that would certainly happen in Apocalypse too. Yeah. But like you said, it goes back to that. It's a bunch of black guys going against each other. He calls out their teeth. They're in loincloths. It's like he goes so far.
And
with
they're
it.
holding an audience full of white people.
Exactly. That's the problem.
But then also, who are the other black characters in there? Oh, you have the Rat Man who ends up dressing up like
a pirate,
WWF superstar, and then you have Mother Abigail who could not. I mean, we have a whole.
We'll talk about
that.
we'll say Mother
But
Abigail.
let's-
But there's something else I want to say about that segment that I actually like in terms of the narrative. One, it reminded me of. Has everybody here seen Network?
Yeah, I have not. But
It reminds me of the whole militia segment in which reality TV.
Yeah,
turns
the militia
into
thing I
something.
love. I think that's cool.
And also, when Franny's watching it and she doesn't think it's real because it looks so surreal.
That's good too. Yeah,
That's good. I just wish they had avoided it.
Well, and if you had removed that chapter and she had just been watching a program that she didn't believe was real, but we, the readers, recognize that she's in shock, and so it probably is, that would have been enough for me.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't need
It's just
and
the racial
let's
fetishes.
not
Yes.
call them characters. They're not. They're set
caricatures.
pieces.
The caricatures.
Yeah.
And well, to your point, they actually do that in the miniseries. They change
Yeah.
up one of your favorite chapters that you mentioned before. Actually, is
The Ray Flowers one replaces that.
Franny and her dad are
So they're listening to the
Ray Flowers.
radio, and then that's when she's like, "Oh my gosh, what's going on?"
Is it so like a reverse War of the Worlds where she thinks it's fake and it's actually real?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I will say this. I'm rereading the comic series for the adaptations episode, and Randall's reading it too. And Mike, you've read it before. I know the comic.
Yeah.
Right? I will say
Wasn't a
this.
big fan, but
Yeah.
well, the art. I like the writing. The art.
You're not a big fan of the artwork.
It's too hyperbolic for me.
I will say this about the comic. Now, it would have been cool to maybe see.
muscles.
Yeah, there's everyone's kind of like a Hunger
Randall
Games
Flagg
and-
looks like he belongs in that Metalocalypse show on Cartoon Network.
I like the artwork, but we'll have words about that later. But I think this is telling them. So the comic was adapted, like 5 years ago, maybe something. So a lot later than the uncut version.
Yeah.
Now it would have been nice to see the comic just be a little bit more diverse in terms of like,
And also not look like a corn video.
yeah,
I had to bring in corn. It's every episode.
It has
we
some
got a
corn.
reference.
Wow.
And I gotta say, the comic book looks like Follow the Leader, to a T.
I disagree. I think corn was in the 90s. I was gonna say I think the comic looks very 90s.
Yeah, right.
But anyway, in the comic, it would have been nice to see in the comic and then maybe make some of the characters just a little bit more diverse in general. But I will say it's telling that the comic takes out that scene, the loincloth scene. Like the comic includes pretty much everything from the book, but they take out the loincloth scene. They take out Larry's line that Brown sounded sure to get around.
Yeah.
I think it's I think it's telling that from a whatever year that was, 2011, 2010 perspective, that and King was involved in the comic. He's like the executive producer on it. Like I think it's telling that they sat down and they obviously had the conversation of like, you know what, we don't need to put the loincloth thing in there. We don't need to make Larry talk quite this way. And we do. I think it is important to take context into consideration. Once again, King was still more progressive than a lot of writers at his
totally.
time.
Yes.
Would never disagree.
Yeah.
And I think, like, as an example, I don't think the fact that he's got, like, Tarantino's weird fetish. I can't ever say that word.
I can't either.
Right? I don't think
Fetishisms.
that diminishes his incredible female characters or some of the more feminist moments in his writing. But you have to acknowledge both. Like, you take the good with the bad,
Exactly.
and that's the whole picture.
And to his credit, like you said about how he kind of reworked the comics, and because he oversaw that. We're all writers here. If we look back on things that we wrote like 7 or 8 years ago,
yeah.
I'm sure. Obviously, we didn't talk about people on loincloths, I hope, but I mean,
Wow.
we would love to go back and change a lot of those things.
Oh,
and the
yeah.
fact that he's able to accept the past and try to make good on the changes, then that's
gotta
absolutely
respect
respectable,
that.
definitely.
Well, now that we've kind of built him up a little bit, I'm gonna play him back down again. I think that maybe not so much this book, and I think it's obviously more reflective in book 2 and book 3, but even still, there's some sections of this book that he overwrites a lot.
Yeah.
Really, in book 1? You think? 'Cause I don't know.
Not so much in book 1. Not so much in book 1.
Well-
But he definitely doesn't in book 2 and 3. But there's still moments in book 1 where I'm just he'll kind of go off on a tangent for a bit, and it kind of kills the momentum a little.
Yeah, I could see
sometimes.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
The number one problem in that regard, Mike, for
Yeah.
me, the only chapter I would really take out
A book
is a book 1. A book.
Yeah.
Let me make a book
Yeah,
1.
book 1.
We're gonna go to book 2
So
later
there's-
on.
Wait
Book
till the
1
book 2 episode.
is when Lloyd Henry meets with his lawyer in prison, and they talk about.
Yeah.
They
Oh, I
talk
love
about.
that.
No,
Oh.
it's so.
Yeah.
They talk about law in general. They
Yeah.
talk about what's going to happen to him. I don't know.
I
it's
just hate it
it's
because
way too long.
I love
Way
Lloyd
too long.
so
I love
much as
Lloyd.
a character, and I wanted more from him. I do agree that the chapter derails from
It
the
does.
intensity of the book, but it's like any more time I can spend with Lloyd, I'm happy about it.
Speaking again from my like fresh as the driven snow perspective, I had a couple of chapters where I thought, well, I got the point 5 minutes ago, and I think normally he's really good at figuring out when he can say just enough. Like as an example, the first 2 chapters, my limited impression from the old internet is that the first chapter where you see Campion leaving the base with his wife and baby was not in the original edition.
Oh, really?
Is that right?
Actually, I think that is true. Yes, that is true.
Really?
So
I'm
I
almost
think that's
positive,
a fine chapter. But then I imagine the book starting
At the
with
gas
the
station?
men at the gas station seeing a car going 15 miles an hour down the road, and that's so much more scary and evocative to me.
Because you don't know what's
Right?
going
Like,
on.
I don't need to know. I don't want, like, I think that particularly when it comes to things that are supposed to be unsettling, the less you know and the more you can piece together yourself, the better. So speaking to specifically, like, the marathon chapter about the magic of the American Free Press, I could have done with maybe the Studio 6 revolt or the LA Times
Ray
or
Files.
like, maybe even, like, 2 of them. But I'm not sure I needed all of those and Kent State and the campus flyer and this and that.
Kent
and
State
that.
was a little much too because
On the
of
nose.
what
It was on the
happened at
nose
Kent
with
State.
literal Kent State
Well,
incidents.
but there's also like these descriptions that are just like, what are you talking about? Like at one point, on page 45, he goes, he's talking about Larry and his relationships, and Larry, he writes, afterward, Larry felt as if he had been through a long pillow fight in which all the pillows had been treated with a low-grade poison gas. Like, what? Like, come on. That's stupid.
He
It's
does
like-
have a lot of, and this is still tying to structure because I think what we're talking about here is this pattern in the book 1, especially of like it's the camera thing again. You meet a character like for Lloyd. There's no reason why they couldn't just had that lawyer chapter happen in chronological order. But what happens is like here's Lloyd in his cell. Here's Lloyd thinking about this thing. Then he was thinking about this thing. So, but anyway, I think like all our problems are tying back to that, and specifically in those like inner thought monologues, he does rely. Some of his metaphors and similes are great, but some of them like that, like you could have just said a pillow fight, or you could have just said poison gas, like during that.
But even here's one more example. I'm not gonna belabor this, but there is another one where he has this great. I'm gonna read you a great bit of prose. And then I want to read you one afterwards. So she just went a little bit too far, and a lot of it ties back into his like stingers and foreshadowing, which I usually love. And I'll read a really good stinger in a bit. But there's this one right here. It's just like, oh my god, like there was something in Larry that gave you the bitter zing of hearing chalk screech on a blackboard. Deep inside, looking out, was only Larry. He was the only one allowed inside his heart, but she loved him. That's great, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Then she follows up with. She also thought there was good in Larry. Great good. It was there, but this late on, it would take nothing short of a catastrophe to bring it out. It's just like, we get it.
Gee whiz.
I guess that's
I
what
don't
you
mind. I don't mind that she thought there was good in Larry because I think that I like the thing they keep saying about Larry about there's something in it that's like biting on tinfoil. That's like really.
Oh, I love that line.
I love that line.
I love it too.
But I do agree. It's never like he goes a whole. Well, for the most part, it's never like he goes a whole chapter too far. It's always like one little line. We'll get to this in Pound Cake.
Can't wait to hear some Pound Cake.
This isn't hyperbole, but I swear to God, if you took out all those, you'd cut at least like 50 to 100 pages.
Easily,
in this
man.
book, especially in book 2.
Even with like Pound Cake, which we'll get to in a bit, there some of those scenes I actually think would be. I mean, pardon the word, I don't mean to be gross, but they would be kind of like good like hot sex scenes, right? Which is important in a book like this, I think. But then he always just adds that little capper that just makes it like ugh.
We'll get there. We've got.
There's so many in book 2, but anyway.
This is the list of Pound Cake that we're going to get to.
God.
All our reactions here will.
Listeners, this takes up at least.
Should we rank the
half
Pound
page.
Cake?
No.
That's book 1. Just book 1.
I like Bea's crotch is all you have right there.
Oh god,
There's a lot of fun stuff.
Can't wait.
We're gonna have a great time.
Form and structure. Any other thoughts here?
Here's the thing. One of the things I love looking at, especially as we're reading from the beginning and going forward, is kind of seeing how King puts himself in there a little bit and puts like these little subtle jabs. And there's one that I really loved that he does on 299. Page 299 when he's talking about
What
Harold.
edition is that, Mike?
This is the newer one. It's like the recent one that I mentioned with the 1945 Polaroid
With
photo.
the dead bodies on this.
But no, there's he goes when Fran's discussing Harold, which is really just King playing the omniscient narrator, basically saying Harold edited the Algonquin High School Literary Magazine and wrote strange short stories that were told in the present tense or with the point of view in the second person or both. And it's like just little things like that. It's like King coming in and being like, God, I hated people that
King
did
puts
that.
a lot of himself in,
And I love that.
in Harold.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Can I say I know I'm jumping ahead a little bit. Can I say I discovered this on my own? I don't know. I haven't looked it up to see if anyone else has discovered it. But speaking of Inspector Underwood, who we'll get to, Inspector Caffrey had a little bit of fun in this book with one Stephen King's father. So first of all, his dad's name is Donald. I'm gonna get this wrong. It's very similar to Trash Can Man's name. It was like Donald, like Trash Can Man's what Don Merwin Albert.
Oh, it
it's
is,
not Merwin, but it's very close. It's something King.
It's right here.
Now here is the. I'm actually going to try and find the.
While you're doing that, one thing I wanted to bring up was when King basically did the facelift for this book for the 90s. He also updated a lot of the 70s references. And what's funny is that I don't know if maybe obviously he didn't have the computers to really do the control and find and all these little 70s style things. But there are a lot of deep stuff in here. Like there's a lot of like Neil Diamond is still a huge singer-songwriter at the time. There's like a discussion of like the currency at the gas station in the beginning that felt very like of the gas sort of shortage crisis that was going on at the time of the 70s. There's they talk about how Hap just bought a color TV, which like I don't think anybody was
Maybe
really...
Arnett, Texas in 1990 was struggling.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, going into their local Radio Shack or Brandsmart. I don't know if anybody remembers Brandsmart. But there is a lot of like little things like that, and also one thing that we'll get to is the chocolate payday conundrum.
I'm looking forward to talking about that.
That
was some interesting.
That'll be interesting stuff.
A big time thing for me too, though, is Stu is somewhat young in the book.
I think
Youngish.
he's I think he's actually in his late 30s. Right?
Okay, but still,
Yeah.
they mentioned that he fought in the war.
Yeah.
Now that doesn't really
90s?
in 1990 that wouldn't. I don't know what war he would have fought
Yeah.
in. Whereas in 1978
Oh, well,
that would have made more sense because 1978
the
obviously
first Gulf
Vietnam.
War.
But 1990.
But not by
If
90
he-
though.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
He had been at the calculator factory for a while. They said so. I
Yeah.
feel like I don't know what
They
war
figured-
I
they're
mean, he
talking
could
about.
have. It's not like we don't have constant American
Yeah.
military intervention.
But I feel like when he
Certainly
wrote in
were
78,
opportunities to serve in the 80s.
he was probably
but
talking about
nothing
Vietnam.
you'd call a war.
That's a good one. I
totally.
didn't pick up on that.
You're
Vietnam
smart.
to Gulf War, Hey, what can I say? Pat myself on the back when I read that. I can't wait to talk about this in 4 months.
Inspector Gerber. I'm
Inspector
case.
Gerber.
Well, there's been a lot of like discussion online that because I researched this stuff because I'm I love the 70s, so like a part of me really wants to go back and read the actual 70s version.
You've been great in that VH1 show. I love this.
I love the 70s. Yeah,
I love
I'd
the
be sitting there and be
70s.
like, thanks, Michael Ian Black. I actually also loved Thin Lizzy, but but the thing is, I think this story belongs in the 70s. Like, I think he should have just kept it.
I don't know why you don't just keep it in the 70s.
I don't know why he had to update it for the 90s. It makes no... I mean, it wasn't like he had to do it in anticipation for the miniseries or anything, because that wasn't even in development yet.
Strange
Like,
updates.
Inspector Caffrey is back.
Oh, he's
This
back.
thing- Okay, so Stephen King's father was named Donald Edwin King, which is Donald Merwin Albert,
Yeah.
whatever. Now, there's this Mother Abigail chapter where she remembers a traveling salesman. She says, "It was surely the nicest house Mother Abigail had ever lived in, and sitting here on the screened-in porch put her in mind of a traveling salesman who had come around hemming for her home back in 36 or 37. Why, he had been the sweetest talking fellow she had ever met in her life. He could have charmed the birdies right down from the trees. She had asked this young man, Mr. Donald King, by name, what his business was with Abby Fremantle, and he had replied, 'My business, ma'am, is your pleasure.'" Now, he keeps going on and everything like that. Now, that's Stephen King's father's name, obviously, but here's where the real kicker is. So she keeps talking about him for like a little while, and then she talks about him leaving, how she didn't buy anything from him. She says, "They had been deep in the Depression then. She hadn't even been able to raise 20 cents for hair ribbons for her granddaughter's birthdays, and there was no chance for that Electrolux. But say, didn't that Mr. Donald King of Peru, Indiana talk sweet? My, she had never seen him again, but she had never forgotten his name either. She just bet he had gone on to break some white lady's heart. Now, Peru, Indiana is where Stephen King's father grew up.
Wow.
And so I think
Man.
in 36 and 37, I think that's supposed to be Stephen King's dad, who goes on to obviously break his mom's heart because his dad left when he was a kid.
Yeah. Inspector Caffrey.
Inspector Caffrey on the case. I know that doesn't tie very much to what we're talking about right now.
But this is what this podcast is about.
I don't know if anyone online has found that yet, but if they haven't, then I get a couple sleuthing points because
you get a couple of pipes and a little hat.
Well, because I was just looking up things about Stephen King's dad, and I saw his name was Donald, and I was like, oh, Trash Can Man, and then when I came across that, I'm like, oh man, he totally put his dad in the book, and his dad was apparently like this. So he's like a merchant marine, just kind of like smooth talking fellow. So I guess that's more King's Dominion, but when the inspector finds a piece of information, he has to share it. So, yeah.
We have our own little bloodhound here.
And mind you, he's actually like wearing like a little hat from like the 40s right now.
It's really weird. He never takes it off.
I know, he's always wearing. He's got a little feather on his cap and everything.
Been waiting 3 months for that revelation.
We don't really have a section so much for this because we talk about the scary stuff, but I usually kind of throw this into the structure and form, and I've kind of been popping this in there since I want to say Salem's Lot, but I did note some like really sharp writing that I really loved, and like stuff that like made me pause. And again, I read it again, and got really emotional, whatever. But I noted like a few places. I want to read just a couple of them. And,
sure, yeah, please.
Because we kind of like I was a little harsh on him, for this. Even though I think book one is my favorite. This is my favorite.
I mean, the thing was, if we didn't, when I first read The Stand, I never noticed any of this stuff. I think because we're all such fans and we read his stuff a lot, you're obviously gonna notice the flaws.
We're being honest.
Well, my first section I really loved is when Larry actually comes back to his mother's house, and it's on page 55. He says, he, who is Larry, followed her past the vanished stone dogs and looked a little wildly at where they had been, just to reassure himself that they were really gone, that he had not shrunk 2 feet, that the whole decade of the 1980s had not vanished back into time. She pushed the doors open and they went in. Even the dark brown shadows and the smells of cooking were the same. And it's like, man, that's
so good. And that's so simple.
Good.
Like, he doesn't even have to say, oh, the French toast smelled like butter on the wind or something. It's like he just says the smell of cooking. It's great.
I love it. And then he also does this. He's really good at building like kind of realistic characters and situations. And one thing I really liked is when he describes his mother 2 pages later, Larry's mother. King writes, she sighed and took a roll of wintergreen lifesavers from her dress pocket. I'm not a lot more than 21 and I feel it. Want one? He shook his head at the lifesaver she had thumbed up. She popped it into her own mouth instead. And it's just like that little thing with the lifesaver. It's just so small and insignificant, but it screams of like a mother.
I had one chunk, and it's more of a segment that struck me with the beauty of the writing too. And it's in chapter 10 when Larry wakes up after being asleep for 10 hours. And first his mother writes a note that's oddly formal. There's no love and there's no dear, but she suggests that they go to the Yankees game together. And then he opens the fridge and it's filled with all of his favorite food. And then he goes to the bathroom cabinet and there's a new toothbrush. Oh God, I'm getting a little dusty just thinking about it. It's so simple, and it obviously affects him so profoundly, and it paints this incredible picture of this woman. It's just like an extraordinary.
Well, this is your first time reading. Did you have a feeling she was gone?
Yes. Well, I assumed pretty much everybody in the first book was going to die.
Yeah.
Like I got to a point when people kept getting sick and kept getting sick and kept getting sick, that once we got to Stu somehow being immune, I was like, oh, well, he's the one who lived then. And I just assumed everybody else was going to die.
Starkey says pretty early on it has a 99% communicability rate. Yeah. So they kind of set it up that that's why once you hear someone cough, they're done.
Did they ever I could have missed it, or maybe it's just it might just slip my mind. Is there any reason that's given for why people are immune?
No, because they that's a big thing.
And that's in book 3 they talk about that.
Yeah. Well, and Glenn and them talk a lot about the implications, and that ties back to some of these destiny elements that we'll talk about with books 2 and 3.
Well, the 2 doctors at the very end address that very topic.
That's the thing, yeah. So and in book 1, because they even say they actually, while Stu is being held at at the Center for Disease Control, they inject him with the virus.
Yeah, I remember that.
But they can't see anything in his body as to why he's fighting it off. And it's like... It's funny because we've talked already about how book 1 doesn't go into such supernatural or faith territory as the other books. I mean, a little bit towards the end, especially with the flag chapter, which we'll touch on in a bit. But I think the reasons for people being immune, that's like the biggest hint we get of like, okay, it's not just that these people have a biological makeup that makes them immune. There's something going on here that's
Well, it's interesting the more I think about it, because I actually just finished reading, and at the end they do mention AIDS, because obviously when they updated this for the 90s thing, and when the two doctors are discussing how the virus interacts with the body, they talk about how it's very similar to AIDS and how it kind of keeps shifting around.
You can get better for a little bit and then it goes on.
Yeah.
I found the part that's my very particular favorite, and it's part of the reason is that it is nothing but periods and 2 commas. And I'm a giant punctuation nerd, right?
Oh, God.
Especially what you can learn about a person based on the way they punctuate. I know that sounds stupid, but like I just think it's really...
We should talk about that later, because I punctuate a lot, and I wonder what that means about
I
do too.
Yeah.
But
Is that
this
mean
is...
we're going to Vegas?
I'm gonna say when the commas are, because it's so simple. The Yankees weren't in town. He remembered that his mother had gone to work when he woke up, but she had left a Yankee schedule on the kitchen table along with a note. Larry, as you can see, the Yankees won't be back until July 1. They are playing a doubleheader the 4th of July. If you're not doing anything that day, why not take your mom to the ballpark? I'll buy the beer and hot dogs. There are eggs and sausage in the fridge, or sweet rolls in the bread box if you like them better. Take care of yourself, kiddo. There was a typical Alice Underwood P.S. Most of the kids you hung around with are gone now, and good riddance to that bunch of hoods, but I think Buddy Marks is working at that print shop on Stricker Avenue. It's just, I love it. So it's just periods. Even the questions are periods, and then you get those 2 lonely commas, and it's just beautiful.
And that it has it kind of conveys the voice so beautifully.
Yeah. It's just beautiful.
Well, speaking of characters having voices.
Your transition.
Not my best transition. I'm not on game with
you're off.
I really tried.
Honestly, the worse the transitions are, the more entertaining. So please.
What about as TNT would say, characters welcome.
You need to be like I'm standing in New York Times Square with
my eyes are closed. The tunnel's ahead.
That's my favorite one.
Oh man. So that leads us to a section that we like to call zeros and villains.
I'm gonna have to kill this fucking clown. Welcome to the Losers Club, asshole!
Can I make a motion?
No.
Start with Larry Underwood, and maybe his mom, since we're talking about that.
No. I think that's a great idea.
Even from when I was a 9-year-old and first saw the miniseries, Larry Underwood has just always been like the most interesting character to me. I love that when this book starts, you don't quite know which way he's going to go, and he's never a bad guy, but he's just always kind of like, he always knows what the right thing to do, but he can't keep himself from doing the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I just love that about his character. I love it. I won't go too much into books 2 and 3, but like, I love how we just see him constantly fighting against himself, and especially with his mom, and how we should talk about his mom separately because I think she's great too. But anyway, are you guys in the Larry fandom?
My favorite character in the book. I'll try to stick it with book 1, but it's Larry.
Yeah.
Because throughout the entire book, despite everything that happens, he's still such self-doubt.
He's conflicted till the very end.
And you've got Stu who goes through a lot. Everybody goes through a lot. It's the plague, you know what I mean? But his degree of difficulty with not only trying to deal with the plague and deal with people around him is having to deal with himself. Whereas I feel Nick has always been alone. Nick's always been alone.
Nick knows who he is from the beginning.
Franny's had a loving family, and she's just a strong woman who has to deal with it. She's pregnant, especially. You know?
And she also outwardly states that there should be order, there should be morale. So you already know that she's good.
You know who these people are.
Yeah. Stu's a loner. He's had a family, but he
helps. The first thing you know about Stu is that he helps someone.
But I love, even again, going back to the first time I read it, something that really stuck with me, and somebody who also suffers from self-doubt every once in a while, is the nice guy Larry.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And things like that when you hear, especially when you're younger, can really stick with you. Like there's some things I remember, like adults telling me when I was a child, that they probably just said it and don't even remember saying it, But I mean, those things stick with you, and that obviously haunts him throughout the entire story.
Yeah.
And so for me, Larry's flaws are so intriguing, and
that's
I really
the
formed the
thing King
entire
does through
time.
the whole book. He gives characters certain moments that they cannot let go for 1,200 pages.
And they're mostly from the I keep saying pre-plague, but the plague is in the beginning of the book. I mean, pre everyone dying.
Yeah.
Yes,
Apocalyptic
For
moments.
Larry, it's the Rudy story that really haunts me. Is that the friend that
Wayne
said,
Stuckey?
The character that he said that he owed Rudy loaned him money.
Oh no,
he said
you're
he paid him
sorry.
back, and then you realize that as he's telling the story to us or to himself, that he's like, maybe I did. He's like, well, maybe I didn't actually pay him back.
Oh, you mean the friend
his
he
childhood
goes to?
friend.
He screws over.
What's Nick Andrus' teacher's name? Is that Rudy also? I can't remember.
Oh, I don't think so.
I'm probably wrong, but no, you're right. Because
but that when he's sitting in it's when he's sitting in New York, Central Park,
Watching the monkey die.
Watching the monkey die. Yeah, he's just sitting there thinking about this in his head, and it just informs his entire character.
And it goes back to what you were saying about something is catastrophic happening, and looking back on these squabbles you had with people, and Rudy's probably dead now, right?
Oh,
and and looking back on this and going, what was it, $20 or something like that?
Well, it's very similar to Last Rung on the Ladder, actually.
Yeah.
Because he's he keeps saying well, I could have done it. I could have reached back. But
I did
it.
And it's too late now.
What gets me about that moment is when he's talking about how afterwards he started thinking about all of the times they went to the movies and he was 25 cents short, and they would go to a restaurant and he couldn't tip, and they would do this and he was always just a little bit short and it was never a problem. And it would have added up to way more than $25.
Exactly. Yeah.
But then what happens to him, he has to, and we, not to name names, but I think all of us probably have friends like that, and
let's name names.
No.
You know what? Let's do it.
No.
Finally, we've got hundreds of listeners.
I'm just
Let's
saying,
do it.
it goes back to the idea of how these big events making you reflect on these kind of things. At the end of the day, this is a world now literally where money and possessions do not matter anymore. And it's Larry's probably thinking wow, I let literally $20 or whatever it was ruin my relationship with who is probably one of my biggest. The thing with Larry is that he has people throughout his life like Wayne Stuckey and this Rudy guy, and even his mom to an extent. Who they don't. His mom's relationship is very interesting because I do think she's unnecessarily cold about a lot of things, but at the same time, I do think she's rooting for Larry, and I think she's in his corner the entire book. And the same thing with Wayne. He has these people who are they're unique friends in that they know better and they're not afraid to tell Larry the right thing to do and that they do know better, and he doesn't listen to them until it takes an apocalypse like that. And what was your are you?
I think that Larry's mother, Alice, is subdued, but I don't think she didn't read as cold to me.
Yeah.
It's some people are just not great at talking about feelings.
No, that's a good point.
But the fact that she feels them is she finds him asleep in his car in front of her house, and it's a non-issue.
Yeah.
All of the silence and the years of hurt, and there's no anger and there's no guilt trip, and she just
that's a good point.
Sort of invites him in, and it's not warm, but I wouldn't call it.
And she's frustrated.
And he hasn't it's funny because in those New York chapters he has this going back and forth between feeling very guilty about how he's treated his mother, but then also feeling like it's like that Jay-Z line in Monster by Kanye West where he's like, what what my Achilles heel is? Love. I can't get enough of it. And I feel like that's Larry a little bit. He in this weird way blames his mom for not being more openly affectionate to him when his mom was actually, you're saying, I think he was a good mom, right?
Don't tell.
Yeah, exactly. It's great, man.
Was a show don't tell person.
And I could talk on hours about Larry.
Well, I think Larry's journey is he has such a hard turn to make. I mean, you look at Stu, and Stu is he's a steadfast, good-hearted person.
Well, he's the John Wayne of the book from the second you meet.
He's the hero.
Although he does prostitutes quite a bit, as we discover later.
Well, yeah,
but that's okay.
Well, he's a boys will be boys.
Yeah,
Allison rolled her eyes.
Could you hear it? I'm pretty sure you could hear it.
For the record, that was not yet. A chair squeaking, that was Allison.
But I'll just say that, and then Franny and
Nick and
Ralph and Nick, they're all fundamentally good characters, I believe. Although I will just do a quick detour to say, I love in Nick's past when he's telling the story about when he first learns to write, and the first thing he writes is "fuck you."
Nick Andros, fuck you.
And King actually
draws
see
it
the
out.
actual draw, and it the "fuck you" is so like childlike. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
That's like one of my favorite. I remember when I was a kid thinking that was so funny too. But Larry, he's like the guy who's kind of inherently selfish. I love what you said about like he's addicted to love and like he can't. It's like there is a selfishness there, and he has that hard turn. And I think that it's like if we're gonna get to the film later, but it's it's interesting to say that in the film. The roles of Rita and Nadine are merged.
Yeah, it's a composite character.
It's a composite character, which I think is one of the biggest failings of the film, because I think Rita is such an important character, not just to the fabric of the book, but to Larry's journey, because Larry immediately, when he meets her, she's taken with him immediately. And he is like, this is a woman that will not only provide me companionship, but she like worships me.
Yeah.
Because like she makes me feel powerful.
And she's old.
But she's like a
Which
beautiful
I'm going to talk about in
woman.
a second.
But it's like, but he literally sees her as like, this is like one of my fans in a way.
Yeah.
Like, and he's so mean to her. Like he helps her, but that scene when
he's not patient with her.
he's not patient with her. Like when she doesn't want to eat, and then he gets mad at her for not wanting to eat. And then she goes, okay, I'll eat. And he makes her food. And then she like immediately throws it up. And he's like, why did you eat if it was going to make you sick?
And she tried not to.
She's like, I told you I didn't want to, but you pushed me. And she's like, and you're right. She's like, she's always like, I'm so sorry, Larry. I'm so sorry, Larry. You're the best. You're the best.
Yeah, at one point, she's I'll just do whatever you want.
I know,
Yeah.
but and that's why I think Larry, he
interesting,
likes having that, and that makes him kind of despicable, even though what I like about Larry is that we're always with him throughout that. Like, he's never like a despicable person.
And he overcomes it eventually.
He does,
Yeah.
but that's the thing is,
That's
it's
his
the
journey.
fact that she dies and he could have prevented it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what really changes him. And then I talked about earlier that scene where he's on the motorcycle and he crashes and he realizes how alone he is and that he has no one. That to me is like literally, that's like when that shift really starts to happen in him. When he realizes like, I don't have the power I used to have anymore.
I want to, in a second, I want to come back to Mr. Wayne Stuckey because I fucking love that dude.
Yeah.
But
we should. Yeah, I was gonna say we should highlight some minor because we're.
Well, no. Let's keep on Larry for a second.
We can
Yeah.
like talk about the primary character and then the periphery, which we're already doing,
For sure.
right? So
Big
like
idea.
we can come back to Wayne, but. I didn't have quite the reaction to Larry that you
Yeah?
did. I find him very interesting. I think the writing is great, but it all feels a little like typical to me,
Is it-
not like it's cookie cutter. He doesn't feel like a cookie cutter character.
No, yeah.
But
Is
I
it like
don't
typical
think,
male struggle kind of thing?
Yeah.
Like the
well,
Walter
and I'll
White.
put struggle in quotation marks.
Yeah,
Right. And this, I'm not sure whether to consider this a flaw of the writing or a flaw of an actual character flaw.
Mm-hmm.
But when he's talking about Rudy, and that whole story is so interesting and sad and weird and relatable. And then we get to, God, is her name Veronica? Valerie? Some name that women don't actually have.
The spatula girl? Or the...
no.
Oh, the one he moved in LA that he lived with
Yes.
for a while? I think it's Valerie.
And you learn nothing about her.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that she would cook for him. He would go and watch the World Series, and he'd come home. She would have cooked for him, and then they'd have sex.
And she'd be kind of
and
bitch
it's like
sometimes.
over and over and over and over again. And that's, you don't learn anything about her. I don't know her fucking hair. Unusually, I don't even know her cup size. Like, you don't, there's nothing, and it feels like
That's a glaring oversight on King's part.
Yeah.
Well,
King even talks about
unusual oversight.
King
on
even
King's
talks
part.
about Mother Abigail and Alice
Yeah.
Underwood's breast size.
Oh, yeah.
It's like ridiculous.
You gotta hold down.
Stay tuned
But
for book 2 for more on that.
It feels like, for the character, pretty typical.
But,
like,
yeah.
sort of, women are defined by what they can do for you and what they mean to you and not who they are.
Well, do you think...
Like Spatula Girl,
Yeah.
or like the way that he views his own mother often.
But that's
And I-
Rita too.
But
yeah,
I-
totally. But as a result, that I didn't connect with Larry at
Sure.
all.
I don't think-
felt like, oh well, I know that guy, and fuck that guy. So I'm sure that will change.
Yeah.
And he certainly was
Yes.
compelling. But in terms of which characters I'm most connected with,
I mean, I definitely say that, like, we're definitely viewing Larry from, because we've read this book so many times,
Yeah, we-
from the
Start to
whole
finish.
package of Larry.
Yeah.
And I think I agree with you, and I think you're viewing the character like, like absolutely correctly, and that's the thing, is he is sort of despicable when it comes to how selfish he is. He's deeply, deeply selfish. When we're talking about the evolution of Larry, it's not as, bad to good as it might appear, like from the way we're talking. It is a complicated journey, and that's why I think that his relationship with women, I mean, I think what you're pointing to are also just some like missteps in character building and creation.
Sure.
But I think also that like with the minor characters, but I think with Larry, he's a character who I think is flawed in ways that I wish King had made other characters flawed. I think that sometimes Stu is a little bit too noble. I think Franny's sometimes a little bit too noble. I like the bit of darkness that we get out of Larry.
And a lot of that's amplified in book 2, especially.
I think a lot of the darkness that Larry has, though, comes from King. Because if you actually look at the trajectory of Larry and his relationship with women, and I feel, maybe, again, this is a lot of me assuming and a lot of just me drawing inferences, but I can't help but think that King sees a lot of himself in Larry, this hotshot one-hit wonder that came out of, that came out of nowhere, like with Carrie being like the surprise hit. He did experience drugs and alcohol, like, around this time, I think, even. So there is like that whole sort of like reckless abandon that maybe he also loves his rock and roll. So I mean, I think there's a lot that he kind of brings into Larry's id, so to speak. But even like his relationship with women, like the idea that because like Larry does, when he's reflecting about the World Series woman that he was with, like in LA, he does have, there's like a tinge of guilt to it because he realized he was a total asshole to her. And part of me does wonder if that's, and again, this is a crazy, wide-reaching assumption on my part, but maybe that's King also feeling like he owes Tabitha more than he ever gives her credit for, because she is the reason why he has a career, that he actually got out and did his own
thing. Literally like fished Carrie out of the garbage can.
And I don't know what his background was at the time of who was supporting who, but
He said in an interview when talking about The Stand that he actually used to work at a laundry press, making $1.60 an hour. Wow. So there's where the Mangler came from.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So do we want to why don't we go around? Like, you talked about Larry's your favorite. Allison,
Larry's my boy.
What character do you want to talk about?
Well, my favorite is Sheriff John Baker, but I feel like my chromosomes suggest that perhaps I should talk about Franny.
Sure. You can do a detour into Sheriff John Baker.
Well, I just love him, so I want to marry him. But he's already married, and I would never do that to Jane.
And his wife is
also he's dead, and she's dead. So
and also Nick Andrews would probably think about be like, wow, he's so huge. I wonder how they're gonna have sex together.
And his doctor constantly talked about his man boobs.
When my favorite. There's so much pound cake in this book. My favorite pound cake line, and I will save it for that section, is Doc Soames talking about Sheriff John Baker with his shirt off. It makes me laugh so fucking hard. Continue though.
I really do love. I love maybe my favorite moment in all of book 1 is when Nick is describing the people who assaulted him. The second that he figures out that it's his brother-in-law, and you can just see in your head this like nice, kind of chubby, well-meaning, middle-aged guy going, "Oh, this is, I'm not gonna get laid tonight." And I just love it so much.
Did Janie love it?
In terms of characters that have a larger influence on the story, obviously I was compelled by Franny. I love the idea that this young woman, whether in the 90s or in the 70s or now, felt like she had the right to decide what was going to happen with her life once she got pregnant. I love all of the moments when she realizes that she's being a little cruel, but that it's also fine. Like the conversation that she has with good old Jesse.
Love Jess.
Jesse's such an asshole.
With Jess, the poet in the chambray shirt.
Yeah.
I love when she talks about like how stupid all of his poetry readings were.
Well, and how he constantly looks like he's posing.
Yes.
Yeah.
But he's such a hunk.
Yeah, I love all of that shit. But she's talking to him on the phone, and he says, "I'm not trying to offend you." Warning sign. Never engage with someone who says that on Twitter. Yeah. I'm not trying to offend you, but I just want to know what kind of rights I have in this situation. And she takes a minute, and she thinks she should be offended, but she's not. And then she says, None.
Yeah. And that's like from the get-go with her too. It's not like
she knows she doesn't want to get married, certainly not to him, but she's not ready to get married in general. She realizes, particularly based on his reaction, but just in general, that she's not in love with him anymore. There's no temptation to settle down and do the family. Like, there's none of that. She wants to talk to her dad about whether or not she should get an abortion, end of story. And it's just really, she's just a great character. And her fucking, I swear to God that would happen to me. If I was in shock because everybody I knew was dying, I would absolutely be monologuing to myself and unintentionally rhyming, and I wouldn't be able to stop.
Yeah.
There would be, and now I want to rhyme. It would be a one-stop shop for all of the rhymes and probably some dimes. Like, it just constantly, I wouldn't be able to shut it out. I find her a really compelling character.
When we talk about Jess Ryder, I won't go too long because I feel like Jess Ryder and Franny's reaction towards him, like, I feel like we all knew a Jess Ryder kind of guy. I
think I kind of was one.
Well, like, I have this very specific memory about where a lot of us here went to school, Florida State University. They have a film school that's very good, and I would volunteer and help out on like undergrad movies a lot when I was a freshman. And I worked on this one movie called Cold Coffee, and it was this like I don't know the title. Now look, the guy who made this movie, maybe he's really cool, and God knows I was writing and making stupid stuff when I was that age too. But this movie was about, and I remember all the undergrad film students that time. A lot of the males, they were all wearing these kind of like long black pea coats and just I don't know, just taking themselves very seriously. And this guy made this movie called Cold Coffee that was filmed at this local restaurant, and it was this couple, this like ex-couple meeting up for coffee, but the coffee was cold, of course. But and the guy and her talking, and he discovers that this woman's new partner is like she's with a woman. It's like a Ross from Friends kind of thing. Like, so I guess she's like either identifies as a lesbian or is just with a woman.
Timeless.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and look, this is 2002, so once again, sign of the times. And so the guy keeps talking to her. He's like, why are you with, and he's like this poetic soul, and he's like, why are you like with this woman now? And why did you become a lesbian? And she says something like, oh, because no other man can make me feel like you did, like being inside me, blah blah blah. So it's like that, the way, and like I said, I don't remember the guy's name who did this movie, and he might be great, like he might be
no more caveats.
Yeah, so like
was it Andy Muschietti?
No,
it's so like
we wish you all the best, Andy.
So when I was thinking of Jess and the way and like. For me, Jess is that guy, but if the girl in this movie was like, fuck you, that's Fran. Anyway, yeah.
So the person I thought of, my very first class, I didn't go to Florida State University. My very first class, like first day of college, was this poetry workshop. First of all, I will say, I was pretty good, but I would never in a million years have said that I was a poet because only douchebags say that. And one of my favorite writers who writes poetry says, I'm not a poet. Who dares call himself a poet? Walt Whitman could call himself a poet. I write poetry.
Yeah.
Or poems.
I'm a writer.
Right.
Yeah.
But I sat down on this workshop and people are introducing themselves and just saying whatever. And I'm going to fictionalize this name because I feel too bad about it. So this is a fake name. But this person says, hi, everyone. My name is R. That's R, just dot. Like, it's not... And the reason for that is that my dad, his name is Ray. And he named me for him. But I have a complicated relationship with my father. And it's really influenced me and shaped my life in a way that I think is really damaging and harmful. So I just go by R. So
read the poem!
It's just R. Merman. Just R. Merman. Not Ray. R.
Oh, God.
And
holy hell.
Then he said, and I'm a theater major. And then I wanted to kill myself.
You think he could have just...
I couldn't take it.
He could have just written R. Merman on his poems and no one would have...
Well, he could have just said, my name is R.
Yeah.
And granted it wasn't R. It was a different letter, but I just do... I don't want to make fun of this person. So, not to his internet face, I don't know.
He probably would have died of the plague anyway.
Yeah.
Probably, but...
Jess, it's fun. I like how they never say... Because Franny never discovers whether Jess lived. He probably died.
Yeah. But still.
Oh, man.
Well, based on how the discoveries they have in book 3 involving the medical type.
So I'm not remembering this part of book 3. And where else?
I was very shocked at all the stuff I forgot.
I'm on book 3 now, so I'll have to,
Anyway, I want to pour one out for Franny, who I think is kind of a badass.
And this is honestly her best moments in the.
Well, we'll see. I'm actually very curious to see how you react to her later in the book.
Two.
Like it's interesting stuff. So.
Well, I mean, it's so hard to talk because honestly, the people I really want to talk about are
the Rat Man.
Of course, the Rat Man. Of course,
who's
the
not
Rat
even
Man.
in the kid. The kid.
He's not. Like,
but for me personally, we talk about
high.
Flag. Obviously, has a lot more to say later on in the book, and the kid has a lot to say later on.
But who stands out in book
But in book 1 for me, I love Larry. We talked about that already, and unfortunately we kind of already talked about my other favorite Periphery character, which is Starkey.
Yeah.
Because this is an example. Because the entire book 1 is all about how we should not trust the government, and basically everybody in the government sucks and will lie to you to meet their own ends, not for the well-being of the public. But here's a character who was obviously a yes man. He rose up the ranks, and then we see him crumble. And the fact that we do have, I think Alice, you touched on this earlier, that we have sympathy for him at all is a testament to King's writing.
Yeah.
And again, I cannot shake him just looking at this person with their head in the bowl. And just seeing the slow goulash, I think, and just the slow crumbling of your stereotypical strong man in the government agency, and the relationship that he has with what's his name, Creighton.
I love that dynamic. Yeah,
I just love. I don't know how much more I can say about that. I mean, he's not in a lie. He's only a few chapters ultimately in book 1.
But he does.
He represents the government at the height of its power, at the height of information. Mm-hmm. This is fake news, all that shit. Yeah. And now it's over.
But it would have been so easy to make that character like a cartoonish, like Patton-esque.
Yes.
But
and they start with that.
And they even do that. Even the miniseries captures that well with Ed Harris. And I think with Starkey, it's important.
God, it's Ed Harris.
It's not.
I forgot you.
But you don't. It's like we don't want to build you up too much. The narrative it works to a degree, but it doesn't nearly reach.
Hey, Randall, I think we all like the miniseries more.
No, I like the miniseries.
I think Ed Harris is really good in that.
I think he's good.
His 20 minutes on the set is great.
I'm just saying that
it's great.
What I think is so important about Starkey 2 is that it allows us to connect again to the beginning. The beginnings of the virus and the little lab where it all started, and the fact that he goes down there, and it feels like what's the word I'm looking for? It feels like a hero's journey in a weird way, like that he is abandoning his post. He's not lying to people anymore, and he goes down into the thing that he's been trying to say either doesn't exist or that he's been proliferating it, and that he goes down without a suit on. He knows what he's doing. He's exposing himself to the virus, and then he goes and it's the last heroic thing he can do is pull this guy's head out of a bowl of goulash.
It's the least shoot himself,
Yeah, it's just at least he did one thing.
Yeah. Because he's so helpless. Because again, you're this prophet general. And you've got no control over anything at this point, and so the least you can do is go down and
you just some guy shouldn't spend the rest of eternity with his head in a bowl
and not open his eyes because he's worried his eyeballs will fall out. Because of that, oh God, there's a description. He moves somebody else's head, the guy's head with the sign.
Yep.
He moves back the person's head, and he hears the sound of his eyeballs falling out and hitting the base of his skull or some shit. Oh God, it's so
I love too how Creighton, once Creighton takes over later on, he notices that Starkey didn't wipe the congealed soup out the guy's eyebrows, and he's like, Jesus Christ, what's Starkey's first name?
I don't remember.
William?
No.
William, right?
Billy.
He says Jesus Christ, Bill, couldn't you have wiped the soup out of his
head? You have to wonder what's going to happen with Creighton now.
Yeah, and it's interesting.
Creighton's going to go down there and wipe it down.
Yeah, it's going to be this whole domino effect. Everybody's just going down
this is dead bodies.
Somebody move this.
And eventually somebody goes down just to heat up another can of soup.
It is interesting. What's interesting that there are a few characters that King never says what happens to him. Creighton never shows a sign of being sick, and maybe he lives. Maybe he goes on to Vegas. But part of what
the Stand Part 2 will be
and they pretty much symbolize where government's going with
Amsterdam.
the president, the highest of order, coughing and losing it on camera.
Which
is very. It reminded me of George Romero.
Oh, totally.
Which is funny because he was supposed to be doing the movie,
the original version. But, and he talks too about how when the president gives his speeches in the book, how it's in a bunker designed to look like the Oval Office. That's so freaky. Yeah.
You know what it made me think of, and I'm showing my nerd card here, but it reminded me of this episode. I think the first David Tennant episode of Doctor Who, when the Prime Minister is giving what would have been the Queen's Christmas Day address. But she says, like, this is unusual, whatever, normally the Queen would be speaking about other circumstances, and then you see her go, do we know where the royal family are? And then she says, oh, and turns back to the camera and says, they're on the roof, because the entire, like, 1/3 of the world's population is standing on the roof trying to jump off.
Oh, gotcha.
But there's this look, because Penelope Wilton is just far too good an actress to play that part, frankly. She's so fucking good. And you see this look in her eyes where she just looks like maybe she's going to laugh, and maybe she's going to scream, and maybe she's going to cry, but she needs to be the Prime Minister. There on the roof, and then continues, and it's great.
With
Doctor Who returning to BBC America.
And with Starkey too, I like what I think it was Justin said, that it really does. King could have easily just not shown any military perspective in this, and that would have been fine. I think the book still would have worked, but it would take away from the complexity of systems breaking down, like we said.
Sure.
I mean, as much as I hate this idea that Starkey and Creighton and all these other generals have, like, oh, if your mother is raped and your father is beaten and robbed, you cover their indecent exposure before the cops come. It's our job to cover up the military. I don't agree with that at all, and that idea scares me, because I think that is what would happen probably if something like this did occur. But I like that perspective is offered, because at the end of the day, even villains think that they're, with the exception of maybe Flag, who just thrives on chaos. At the end of the day, even villains are doing things because they think it's right, you know?
Yeah.
And Starkey's decision to release it in Europe and cover everything up sucks, and it's awful, but at the same time, like, he's doing it because he thinks it's the right thing to do, and by showing that, it makes the first book so not black and white, in a way that the previous books don't do, unfortunately. So anyway, yeah. What about you, Mike? Who's your character?
I mean, I would say, I love Larry.
Yeah.
But I really, really, really loved every chapter with Nick Andros.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think the relationship that he has with everyone he comes across, he always gives them the benefit of the doubt.
Yes.
Which is really, like, heartwarming. You know, in a very cynical book, at least the first section of it, he was just kind of like a beacon of light.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, you'd already talked with Sheriff Baker, like that just it's not that very long that he meets them and becomes almost like family with them.
Mm-hmm.
And just going through his eyes through the whole town and being able to experience the plague with someone who can't even talk and who can only write, and it was such a unique experience, because you really do get to be in his head and get his thoughts. And for me, that was just really rewarding. And when I don't know. I just really, really love those chapters.
I mean, and of all the characters to you know, I guess, have doubts about the people around them, Nick is the one.
Yeah.
He grew up in foster care, essentially, deaf and dumb. And
and he drags him through the ringer.
And King punishes him so much, and it's incredible.
But
the way he never
describes
loses that faith in people, which is, you know, it's just like an inherent thing.
Plus, he's a Lovecraft fan, so that's cool.
But he
cool.
Like, he literally, he gets, the way King describes all of his injuries, they just make me shudder.
The eye gouging is just...
Yeah, well, just like the whole scene with Ray Booth and the fact that Ray almost takes his sight. Yes. And if he takes his sight, like, he's fucked, you know?
Well, he's just so, like, he's so pragmatic, and he's also so tactical. Like, the way he's able to figure out things is really great. And, like, this is one of the instances, because Glenn, who's also one of my favorite characters, but he kind of shows up at the end. But, you know, what we learn with Glenn is that Glenn is able to basically be King's way of writing thesis statements and chapters and stuff. But he does that also kind of with Nick. Yeah. Because Nick is more telling. Because, you know, you can't, I mean, there's a lot of showing there, but what Nick says in his head is what Nick thinks and says.
Exactly.
And it goes in there. So it is, for a while, Nick is a vessel for King to kind of really hammer down some really great points. So there's a lot of, like, sobering realizations that you get from Nick.
And I will admit, I did come to eventually like Glenn a lot, but part of what I hate about Glenn is when you first meet him, he goes.
Oh,
and he's
you
like,
hate it. You texted me.
I text him like he's pissing me off. He's just like going on these diatribes, like being this emotionally detached
I
asshole.
cannot hate him because he's Ray Walston.
Yeah. Oh, that's
How
true.
could you hate Ray Walston?
Mouse the motorcycle.
Mouse the motorcycle, baby.
I can defend Glenn later.
And I will say I especially as the faith in the book becomes more prevalent, I actually come to value Glenn's point of view a lot more, and I do like those rants he goes on. I think the problem with presenting it so immediately off the bat is it just doesn't feel real with Glenn, because it's like, who talks like this? Blah blah.
Yeah.
But and like I said, the book does earn that eventually. What I like about Nick is what you're saying is that Nick has to talk like that because he's writing. Like, how do we all talk when we write? It's much more eloquent than when we talk on a podcast, And so
Speak for yourself.
I struggle to see transcripts of our podcast.
Oh god, it's probably like me saying yeah.
Parentheses,
I sound like stuttering Bill Denbrough every minute.
Yeah.
Do you think that? Do you see Nick as young as he is?
He's 21, right?
It's like 21, 22 years old. Does that
I will
work for
say
you?
no, only because I was spoiled with the movie.
Yeah.
Rob
And
Lowe.
Rob Lowe
I
was
see
about
Lowe.
30 in the
I see
movie.
Lowe.
It's
Yeah.
Rob
And so
Lowe?
it's-
Yeah.
God, there's a whole world of wonder awaiting me.
I envy you,
In
Allison.
our casting, we had him as Michael B. Jordan, which I tried to try to picture in this.
Yeah.
But it would have to be not Creed buff.
No,
It's more like Fruitvale Station, Michael.
Yeah.
The thing, I like that you're bringing up age, and we've talked a little bit about this, like off mic. But Nick, it is fun because for the most part, with the exception of like Stu and obviously like Ralph and Glenn and everyone, there are some of the characters they're so young.
So
in this.
young.
Now, granted, this was in the 70s, and I think maybe I'm making an overgeneralized statement here. I do think just because the average lifespan was shorter and like. It wasn't the norm for everyone to go to college. I do think people were like striking out on their own a little bit younger. Like my parents had me when they were 21, 22, and by the time they were married, they had 2 kids who were almost into middle school. So I think part of it's that, but it is funny with Nick. Nick, it doesn't bother me quite as much because I think he is supposed to be like kind of special and like resourceful. And you could argue that everyone that survives to go into these 2 camps in the book is supposed to be resourceful, but like,
that's
interesting idea. That's a good point.
Larry, because they even say like I think Glenn has that line about like, I think everyone has some bit of shining, which we can talk about in King's Dominion, and I think that the people who survived maybe have that like extra step. So you could argue for that. However, Nick being 21 doesn't bother me as much because I get the idea that he's supposed to be touched by God in a way that maybe some of them aren't. But like Larry,
he doesn't believe.
Which is
another interesting aspect.
And what I like is that he never really comes around. He never has that.
Yeah.
And that's where I think that we're going to get
We'll get to
later.
religious thing. But
the idea about religious stuff is
But what about like not to go back to Larry too much, but like Larry's supposed to be like what 26 or 28.
Yeah,
he feels older though.
He feels
doesn't
like
he?
in his 40s. Like and like I mean, even Stu, he's supposed to be in his mid 30s. Like that's about.
He knows way too much.
Like
Stu feels like an old man.
That's it, and that's about our age. And once again, there are.
Well, he fought in the war.
Yeah. It's like,
maybe he's Wolverine.
Well, when he wrote it, I guess
Ran
it's Vietnam, and I guess it could.
Old man
theoretically
Redmond.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, it goes back to this thing of like.
And how about Glenn? Like he's like clearly 119.
I have to say, every time that just the name Glenn comes up, I picture the
Madden?
kid from Madden.
Yeah.
Oh
It's
yeah.
really like it's an odd.
My favorite character.
Would you say that Glenn is creepier than any villain in The Stand?
Yes.
Oh, Glenn
from Mad
Matthew
Men?
Weiner's
Yeah,
socially
Matthew Weiner's
awkward
son.
son. Yeah. Well,
God.
I remember-
Socially awkward son.
Sorry,
Sorry, we're going off.
I don't
apologize.
mean to be the kid basher. on
No,
this.
no. Listen.
I came
By
down
the
hard.
time
The
the
character.
Showman's
The
using-
character's.
I came
all
down
right?
on Finn Wolfhard hard, who I actually like quite.
And you
his
also,
character.
we all came down on Cortland Mead.
Yeah.
No, I defended Cortland.
you
Mead. I was
defended
like,
Cortland?
I like Cortland.
That's fine, Dan. You go ahead. You defend Cortland Mead. I'm not going to defend
Matthew
Cortland Mead.
Weiner's son.
I'm
I
his
shouldn't-
Instagram friend.
I shouldn't say Matthew Weiner's socially awkward son. I don't know Glenn
The
Weiner.
character is socially. awkward.
Yeah, but I don't know how much of that is from the character or like
Well,
his
don't.
son.
You're digging yourself. You're like Sean Spicer over here. Just accept the fact that the character's strange. And we'll move on.
Going back to the Stan's age issue, even Harold, who I love that he is 16, as the book goes on, I'm like, and I don't know, maybe the apocalypse ages people.
He
I
feels
don't know.
more like 18, 19.
Yeah.
to me.
But I also say I think emotionally, Harold resonates as 16 to 18.
Yeah.
But intellectually, he's on another level.
It's whereas emotionally he's very immature, but intellectually,
and like
I mean, he does write short stories from varied perspectives.
Yes.
When they make fun of like he used a second person present, I was like, I've done that.
I do that all the time. I love that.
But one of my favorite books is that.
Which
Brightlight's Big City.
Oh, I do like Brightlight's Big City a lot. The bread, I love the end of the bread. But going back to Nick real quick, I think another strength of Nick's storyline, it's not just, I mean, Nick is an awesome character, but all the people in Shoyo, Arkansas, even the 4 dudes who beat him up, they all have such distinct personalities. And like, I will say, I actually agree with the miniseries decision to like make Ray Booth in there the whole time. It feels weird that Ray
develops the character more.
Yeah. But I think everyone in Shoyo, like Allison talked about Jane Baker. I was not like less strong on the latter level of emotionalism, but Nick where Jane Baker just keeps saying like, this is horrible, like I want to be with my husband, like the way she talks about her and John's relationship, and like
when she talks about their honeymoon,
it's just heartbreaking.
And I was literally like, I think when I read that stuff, I was right about to go on my honeymoon with my wife.
It makes you think about like I think the fact that like you guys are saying Nick is like this character could have been so hardened, and he actually is probably one of the most empathetic people in the book. I think everyone he talks with that conversation he has with where Doc Soames comes and like talks to him on the park bench, and it's kind of one of the
I love the park bench,
and it's one of the first times we really hear about exactly what's going on with the lake, and he talks about Doc Soames' car weaving in and out, and that how even though Doc is sick, it's more exhaustion that's like freaking out. So I think Nick, because he can't talk, he makes people want to talk to him and spill their guts in a way. Yeah. And so everyone he interacts with in Shoyo, Arkansas, the scene work is so good because he just gives people this forum to just pour their hearts out to him, and it doesn't feel cheesy at all.
Well, in terms of his setting, I mean, first of all, the fact that he can't speak or hear sets him apart from literally everybody else.
Yeah.
And you put him in this small town, which is even more detached from everything else going around. So it's crazy that it takes a doctor to talk to him on the bench to tell him what's happening. Everybody else just turns on the radio or the TV, or you're in a big city and you see it happening in front of you, and Nick is so unaware for most of the book one.
Yeah, I think that it provides kind of an interesting parallel to the structure and format of the book, in that whenever he turns his back on somebody, he no longer knows what's happening and what they're saying. And in some cases that's a blessing, but it feels a little bit like this limited perspective that we get, these little flashes, zooming in as you were calling it, where particularly whenever he's in near the jail cells, and these men are first hurling insults at him, and then they're pleading, and then they're insulting again, and then they're raving, and all of this. Every time he turns his back, it's like it goes quiet.
Yeah.
And he has no idea what it is that's happening, and I found that very evocative and upsetting.
That's powerful stuff.
What about you, Randall? Who's your MVP?
Well, it's funny because we were just talking, and I was like, well, I probably want to talk about Lloyd, but then I was like, I don't know, I almost want to wait to talk about Lloyd until book 3. And then Harold is my favorite character in the whole book, but I kind of feel like I need to wait till book 2 to really dig into him.
He shines in book 2.
Whereas, so I almost feel like I want to focus on a character who's only in book 1, and I've already talked about her a little bit, but I really want to talk about Rita. I think Rita is the most important character. Well, not the most important character, but like a character that really matters to me in a lot of ways, because we don't see a lot of people like her in the book, since the people we're following are the people who would be leaders. They're people who are very resourceful. They're people who can figure out how to survive. They can figure out how to be assertive and sustainable in this world. And Rita is somebody who's completely incapable of that, because she lived a high society life. She was married to a very rich man. She lived in a penthouse in Manhattan. It's like she was a rich older woman who had kind of forgotten how to do things for herself. And so when Larry finds her in New York, and it's, and like I've already talked about, but it's like she gloms onto him, and she becomes so dependent on him. And that's a perspective that I think we don't really see a lot in the book, because even as it goes on and we meet children, when we meet Joe later in the book, that's a kid who would be able to survive on his own, though. And we have a lot of thoughts on Joe, which we'll get to. But but even people like Nadine, these are people that can survive. They on their own. Mm-hmm. We don't see those characters a lot who are completely not self-sufficient.
Well, and it breaks her. It ends up breaking her.
Well, yeah, and and just that sense of, and she tries to be positive, and she tries to say things like, Larry, tell me that we're gonna go on an adventure. I need you to say that we're going on an adventure. She has to view it in that way. And there's something so sad about it to me, and she was just so insulated as a person, and so insulated emotionally and physically, that for her to venture out into the world, it's a very scary thing for her just in general, not to mention the fact that there's dead people everywhere.
Yeah. See, I agree with all that. My problem is that King is so obsessed with stressing how old she is.
I know.
And it's so distracting. Here's just a real quick one. She was maybe 50, but had taken great pains to look younger. That's early on. And then, oh my gosh, in chapter 35, he just goes ham. Just talking about all this. It's she turned to him, her face haggard. If she had looked an elegant 40 in the park the day he had met her, she now looked like a woman dancing on the chronological knife edge that separates the early 60s from the late. There was a cigarette between her fingers, and the tip trembled, making jitters of smoke as she brought it to her lips and puffed without hailing. It's her facial muscle sagged into something like relief.
And he talks too about when her and Larry have sex, and Larry's disgusted by her naked body because she's older.
But it's just so, it hammers the point home so many
times.
And
he acts 50 is
I
and
know.
once again, this goes back to what you're saying. Is this intentionally being presented like this because it's from Larry's perspective? And he's kind of an asshole.
I would say yes.
I think it's from Larry's point of view.
It's Larry's point of view.
Yeah.
And he's used to banging groupies.
Yeah, exactly.
He remembered an instant of disgust when he saw how her breasts sagged and how the blue veins were prominent.
Yeah,
he didn't think of his mother's varicose veins. But he had forgotten all about it, that when her legs came up and her thighs pressed against his hips, that's
Larry's perspective. That's Larry.
Can we just table all of this?
But it just was...
I've got I've got some things to say.
Some pounding thoughts. All right,
and that's good. But I will just say that, I still, regardless of all of that, I think that she is a perspective that is not seen very much. Because honestly, I feel like most of the people that we see in the Free Zone and in Vegas, they're more in the Free Zone, and this is almost a problem I have with it, and it's something that's really played up in the movie because we were laughing about it. Yeah. But it's in the Free Zone, everyone's very folksy.
Yeah.
It's everyone's
I cannot wait to.
Yeah, she's a very New Yorker.
But then in Vegas, in the movie and in the book a little bit, it's everyone's a fucking biker.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's all Southern.
Yeah, and so I feel we don't see the perspective of high society, New York, Manhattan, and how their power is money. Money no longer matters.
Yeah.
And if you are a survivor, how do you cope in this world?
Well, that's my favorite moment of hers, and it's so brief, and it's right near the beginning, is she notices Larry looking at her rings.
Yeah.
And then it's do you want one of these?
Yeah.
My husband put a lot of value in diamonds, and it's obvious that she's already recognized that this is now completely invalid.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter at all.
Yeah.
And she's just done the thing because that's what she does. And these trappings of this life that she had have become trinkets.
Yeah.
This is not at all exclusive to Rita, but she talks about it right before they go in the tunnel, and this is something that bothers me throughout the whole book. Mike, you had talked about how everyone in the book is a pop culture aficionado almost. Yes. And now look, I know that The Stand, as you mentioned, is Stephen King's riff on Lord of the Rings. And I'm a Tolkien head. I mean, if you go in that...
You're a Hobbit head?
Big Hobbit head. If we're recording this in my house, say if you go into that room right there, you'll find about 4 Tolkien art books. I love Tolkien. Now, every fucking character references Lord of the Rings at some point in this book. Larry references it. Rita references it right before they go into the tunnel.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that everyone knows what Lord of the Rings is, but this is also pre-movies, and I remember growing up and being the only I get made fun of for liking The Hobbit and stuff, and now it's everywhere. But
you used to get made fun of.
No, it's so not only does everyone know what Lord of the Rings is, Rita recalls a specific line about going on an adventure.
Yeah. Well, as we know, she's so old. Maybe she went to school with J.R.
Yeah, exactly. She was at Oxford with J.R. But and then
Franny's got one too. She talks about
Franny's got one, and then they start bringing up the most obscure references.
Oh,
from book.
Comic book artists.
They talk about the comic book artists who drew it. They talk about many characters, and Rita might be one of them. I can't remember. They talk about the Tower of Barad-dûr, and I'm look, whoa. I'm like a token hardcore nerd. And I know that, but like no one.
You're a veritable Bilbo.
Yeah, I'm a real Bilbo. I'm a real Tom Bombadil.
We got Dan Caffrey over here or Dan Baggins?
We're recording this from Bag End. But
You're in a little shire.
In all seriousness, I think Rita's line right before they enter the tunnel was the first time, because Larry had already mentioned Lord of the Rings. I'm like, wait a minute, is like everyone has everyone read like Lost Tales by J.R.R. Tolkien in this book? Like anyway, it's just such a small thing, and it's not exclusive to Rita, but like it's just a little thing that bothered me. We'll talk about that.
Well, I'll just say that like I feel like Rita is representative of all the. We see all the vignettes of people who die in non-plague related ways after the apocalypse. And I feel like Rita is sort of the bigger version of that because she dies by ODing on all of her pills. Mm-hmm. And the thing is,
and it's not no great loss because it actually does. We see how it affects Larry.
Yeah, and it actually really it ripples throughout. And one of the things I love about Larry, he never lets that go. It haunts him the rest of the book, and that to me is very powerful.
Very, very
but the thing is, like people like that would exist too. Like I mean, especially in modern culture, like think of how addicted we are. I'm 100% one of these people to like medication and pills. We need those things to balance our minds. Imagine if fucking world ends. It's like you're gonna up those doses. You're gonna and especially when you can just walk into a pharmacy and take that shit. Like no wonder. Like that to me, her death was inevitable and probably one that happened all throughout. Like people OD'd like that probably like crazy.
Absolutely.
We're forgetting one important character. And speak of the devil, the tank.
The dog. Yeah. Sorry, we are recording this in my house. So if you hear the click of toenails or the friendly bark, that's
probably me. That's our personal. It's our personal Kojak.
Well, we also have another dog in this book that's not Kojak. Spuds McKenzie. Makes a fun little
Spuds
reference.
is in this.
Wait, what? When?
Oh yeah, nice little pop culture thing that he probably added in 1990.
Yeah.
Wait, really quick question, because we all had the unabridged version, but mine has a bunch of typos in it that are not in your guys' version.
That's right.
Like, all right, so
I've got some typos.
So part 2 of the book is called On the Border, and in my version it is literally spelled on the border, like BOARDER. And King at one point, this is a big thing for King, he misspells breasts as beasts. And
he does.
So that is
misspells, quote unquote.
But there's a part of that's making me wonder. Because maybe I just missed it, but I didn't notice Spuds McKenzie. Do you think he added things as the additions?
Because Spuds McKenzie wasn't around 1978.
No.
Yeah.
Right? He had been added.
No, he was in 96.
So I don't know if my book has this. Please do share about Spuds McKenzie.
Well, it's just like a poster, isn't it?
Oh, it's just a little random. It was a joke that tossing in there. A fun little sweet treat, if you will.
Hey, we love the sweet
treat.
treat.
We're big fans of Spuds
McKenzie.
Mac,
you're wrong.
Didn't you write about it?
I wrote a whole piece for Spuds.
Hey, I was thrilled to see him come back for the Super Bowl. I hope he comes back again. Maybe on the beach.
Well, it's the same dog, too, so I'm glad about that.
Matt Gerber is not here, but when he comes back for book 2, we may have to let him talk about the Sweet Treat. This is his favorite character.
Well, Sweet Treat would be something that we would put in
the cemetery.
Well, speaking of,
there is actually a major character we haven't talked about at all.
Wait, who's that?
Stu Redman.
Yeah, Stu Redman.
Well, honestly, I don't know what there is to say. Like Stu's a great character in a lot of ways. He's a decent everyman, but he is by no means in my top 5 favorite characters.
So the only reason I know that he's an important character is because when I was trying to keep track of all of these fucking people that we're meeting, I was consulting Wikipedia's specific article, Characters from the Stand.
Yeah.
So there's a whole article for it. And one of the first things it says in the description of Stu is played by Gary Sinise. And I went, oh, okay, so he's going to live. So he'll live.
Well, here's the thing.
Because you don't know.
About Stu, and I think it's good that we're breaking this up into 3 different episodes because I think we're going to have a lot to say about Stu, not only in book 2, but especially in book 3.
Yeah. Book 3.
And so I think the focus is going to be much more on him than it is, like on
But
Nick
in
or
book
something
1, the thing that made me, and there were 2 moments that I was like, oh, I really like this guy. And one is when he watches the car careening right at the beginning of the book, and then just like casually reaches over and flips all the switches on the gas pumps.
Yeah.
That's one.
Yeah.
And 2 is when he pretends to be sick.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love
To
Stu.
freak people out.
Oh yeah, that's fun.
Excellent. It's so good.
When you say Allison, this is an analogy that you used a long time ago. I think when me and Susan first met you, and I've always really liked. You were saying how there's like furniture watchers and furniture movers, and like Stu is definitely like a furniture mover. Like he doesn't even have to say like the pumps. He notices that everyone's freaking out, and not doing anything about it, and so he just goes.
In the movie,
this is
turn off the pumps.
Hey, that's a great
missed opportunity. That should never happen.
I know.
That's a character-defining moment. I'm so
agree.
angry. Table flip. No, furniture movers.
Turn off
So
the pumps, Hap.
the whole world is defined in two groups: furniture movers and furniture watchers. And furniture movers see someone trying to lift a couch they can't lift, and they help. Furniture watchers watch people move couches. This is especially useful when you're running a small nonprofit theater company, but it comes in handy in all walks of life. And if you have someone in your life who watches you trying to move a heavy couch by yourself, and they sit and watch you, that person is garbage, and you should get rid of them.
Yeah.
And he is a furniture mover, for sure.
Stu is a good man.
I know some furniture watchers.
Well, one character, if we're talking about the dichotomy of people, one character that we would be remiss to not talk here is Lloyd. Like, we need to talk about Lloyd for a second, because although he does pop up a little bit more importantly in book three, book one, he gets all his characterization.
It's true.
The reason why he's flawed in a way, because the thing is, there's a conundrum here. I feel like Lloyd, out of all the characters, is someone that King understands from the get-go. Mm-hmm. Like, right when you first get to his character in the book, you get an idea that you know what King wants to do with this character. You know, he's someone that's going to be wrestling with his emotions. Like, yes, he starts out as bad, but there is good to this guy. Like, he does understand that he's been corrupted. He's, the whole thing of this, like, I was led, or I was misled, comes up with Harold big time, but it also kind of ties into Lloyd in a bit, and it shows up early on in book one, because he's with the pokerizer, his buddy, Poke. But he does understand that, like, that what he's doing is wrong, and that this is all circumstantial, and that he can't help it. And
I don't know though. I mean, like Lloyd. I remember I was taking notes when he was first introduced, because I was like, I love Lloyd.
Yeah.
He is top 2 characters for me.
Yeah.
And it's like his reasons for standing with Flag as the book goes on are like, it makes him one of the most noble characters in the entire book.
Yeah, absolutely.
But like when he's first, and the thing is, and I'm not saying this is a reason to write him off. I'm saying this is what gives him an interesting character. It's like when he's first introduced, he is a bad dude. Like,
no, he is.
And he talks like Lloyd is like legitimately a rapist. Like, he's not just a murderer. Like, they write about, like, he literally was like a rapist as well.
But again, with the Starkey thing, there is an inherent humanity to him.
When
he talks about the rabbit, for example.
Well, the rabbit story is so
it's
powerful.
something that's what I mean. It was like, you actually see that sort of tumultuous conflict in his inside that you don't really get with any of the characters until Harold starts developing in the book.
I agree with that.
And I think that's an important thing to have in this book. When it's about good and evil, you need the characters to have that sort of like that conflict.
They need to feel human.
Yeah, and like you get it with Larry for sure. And it's a lot more subtle, because I still feel, even though in the beginning you still get the sense that Larry's going to be a good guy.
He's not a murderer or a rapist like Lloyd.
But with Lloyd, like, he's interesting too, because he doesn't really have a choice. I mean, in the sense, like, he's kind of in the shittiest situation of anybody in the apocalypse. So by when you first meet him, of course he's going to go with Flag, but the fact that he even starts debating it in his head when he's in the shittiest of situations says a lot about himself as a character.
And this is
the fact that he even had that debate instead of just saying, "Oh, I'm going to go with Flag because I'm evil anyway," says
this is
a lot.
This is what you and I talked about.
Yeah.
Lloyd isn't given a choice.
No.
Why didn't Mother Abigail come save him?
And here's the thing:
the fucking jail cell.
If Mother Abigail had showed up, he would have gone with her, and I guarantee he would have been devoted and been a very good standing member of the Boulder Free Zone.
Two things on that though. Before we get into like the nerdy logistics of it.
No, this is good.
Flag travels wherever though.
Yeah.
Mother Abigail is pretty much 108 years old. She makes her own bread, God bless her. And there will be water if God wills it. But she is at home. She's not going to be able to travel on her own to go to that prison where Lloyd is. You know what I mean?
Well, she can go to that farm now.
That's
my
my argument in defense of Mother Abigail.
But it is the thing at the end of the day, and once again, this ties more to books 2 and 3.
Yeah.
I would argue, although he ends up siding with the bad guys, and they actually say that in the book, like, you bad guys. But although Lloyd does go in that direction, I would still argue that he is probably a better person after all these events than beforehand. I mean, yes, he.
What changes? Like, that's the thing. Is the apocalypse. Everything that he goes through, it changes him.
Exactly.
Like, I agree with you when you say if he had been to the Free Zone, he would have been a good member there. Because, like, I don't think he has that desire to, like, be. Like, I think that he was.
It's not power he wants.
Yeah.
He just wants appreciation.
We have totally delved into future book conversation.
Yeah.
Which
Oh,
is
yeah, I won't
fine
say
because
too
I
much.
don't care about spoilers.
Yeah.
It's fine. But my perspective includes very little of what you guys are talking about.
Bring it on.
So I'm helpful
Yeah.
as like we're talking about book one police.
Yes,
Yeah,
please,
yeah,
Right?
please.
Yeah.
So there's very little to me in book one that makes him seem like a sympathetic character, but now I'm very excited about
Ah.
his future
Have you
development.
gotten to the rabbit story?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
See,
Yeah.
the rabbit story.
Oh,
really,
it's why he's not black and white,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But
It's a story that I honestly I skipped it when I did this reread because I've become, ever since I got a cat, I can't deal with animal violence anymore because I'm a bastard, and but the cat, I remember the rabbit scene so vividly. I was like, I skimmed it and I was like, I can't deal with the rabbit eating its paws. Like it's too much for me.
Well, I mean, honestly, it just boils down to that choice at the end. That the fact that he even had to second guess it makes you think, oh, okay, he's not just purely evil.
And he actually feels dread when Flag shows
Yes.
up.
Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah.
Even despite the fact that he's about to eat his prison mate, I
Yeah.
mean, that's the whole thing.
there
It's
is the supernatural element though in the like introduction of Flag chapter. They talk about how even the people who are willing to go along with him feel this sense of dread and
Yes.
Yeah.
specifically when they're talking about him having sex with women, because of course it always comes down to fucking right. But and even the women who are willing wind up stiffening and feeling as though they're being violated.
Remember that
even
for
if
later
they've
on.
willingly gone to
And that's the
Yeah.
difference with Trash Can Man and Lloyd too. Is Trash is so excited about Flag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like he's the one who doesn't feel dread. He's like, you are my god, I worship.
Well, there's a
you.
difference between straight up crazy people and then just like sociopaths.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
and
there's-
so, but Lloyd is not a sociopath.
No, I don't think so
I
either.
think
Yeah,
that
yeah.
he has violent tendencies that
He's
He's easily
Yeah.
misled.
Yeah.
Because what's his name? His partner, and they
Well,
just ride
Poke
around.
was the
that
real
guy's
monster
fucking
of that
crazy.
group,
Yeah,
yeah.
he's crazy.
I
And
think
like-
Poke is a
yeah.
He's
Poke
psycho.
is
He's
And
just
that's-
straight up. He
yeah,
would be
and
excited
that's-
to see Flag too.
and
Still
that-
a rapist though. Still a rapist.
Oh,
Oh, no,
I'm
no,
with
no,
you.
no, absolutely.
Like that's why I think the character's so complicated, and that's why I'm like, there is, that's why I love that King tackles the idea of a guy who indulges in that kind of behavior. What does he become in the apocalypse? And that he didn't just make it; he becomes a straight bad guy.
Yeah.
Like Lloyd is such a complicated character in so
Yeah.
many ways, and that's why I was like, I want to hold off till book 3 because book
Yeah.
3 is when he really
Yeah, but
gets
here's
like,
and the only reason why I bring him up now is because he is such a big part of book one, and he is so non-existent in book two.
Yeah, I
Which
agree.
I think
Which
I'll
we will
discuss
definitely
one
talk
of the
about.
biggest
That is
faults
true.
of law
Yeah,
of the
but
book.
we won't say too much more
It's
about
a
that.
it's a flaw, much like the red flaw in his jet black necklace.
Hey!
And where would he be walking around? Possibly.
the cemetery.
What's the bottom of the truth?
Well, sometimes that is better. The person you put up there ain't the person that comes back. It may look like that person, but it ain't that person. Because whatever lives in the ground beyond that cemetery ain't human at all.
The cemetery is the section where we like to talk about the things that go bump in the night.
Or the day.
Wow.
In this case.
Or the day in this case. The things that spook us out. Stephen King is a horror writer first and foremost, and we like to talk about what's scary. So I'm actually going to kick it off. I've got just a really small quote, and it's something that we've talked about ad nauseum, but I've got an actual quote. But literally, I think in book 1 at least, the scariest moment for me is when Starkey goes down into the lab and then kills himself. And but this one quote destroyed me. I thought it was so good. The smell in here was worse. Rancid food as well as dead bodies. Starkey looked around with dull horror. Some of them seemed to be looking at him. Men, Starkey said, and then choked. He had no idea what he had been about to say. And that's it. It was just like the fact that he started saying something like, and then men, I don't know what he was saying.
What was I got that maybe it was like a military, like commanding them to attention or something,
Yeah.
But who knows?
It's just such a freaky little moment, and then the sign that says, now you know it works. Yeah, now you know it works. Any questions? That is so spooky to me until I imagined David S. Pumpkins
Yes.
saying, any questions?
I know.
No.
Oh, Randall, fuck you!
Thank
God, I drove past that
Now
section
you know it
6 months ago,
works.
4 months ago.
I did get scared in that same scene by the. He also sees the two people who, realizing they were dying of the plague, had sex really quick and then killed themselves. Like that was also very.
That's so
freaking
dark.
Also, I think goulash is disgusting, so I kind of.
What is
disgusted
goulash
by
like
that
a
too.
frozen soup kind of thing? Like a Russian
It's
frozen
like
soup?
the in-betweенsies of soup and
That's a
casserole.
perfect example of we haven't decided what we want this meal to be, so let's call it goulash.
I think it manifests in different ways too.
Kind of remind me of Dr. Strangelove a little bit. The way that the government had kind of just shrugged and Mandrake when Mandrake is talking to God damn it, what's the general's name in that?
It's Gorilla. What's his
I can't
name?
remember. Either way,
Sterling Hayden's character.
Yeah. Like
Kilgore. Is it Kilgore?
like he reminded me. Like Kilgore, it might have been that actually.
Yeah.
It reminded me of that whole descent into madness right there, where he just is like, it's all over. I mean,
So
obviously
he is kind of like a more comedic version of Starkey a little bit in a way. Yeah.
I mean, for me, I think the book one has the scariest moments of. I mean, I think honestly, book one has all the scariest moments, really. Because I just don't think book two and book three are particularly scary at that point. But
I think there's some. I have a few that I wrote down.
They're more. Book 3 is more of an action drama.
I think Mother Abigail's bowel movements are pretty scary.
Yeah, we'll get into that one. Jesus. For me, the scariest moment in all of book one, and actually the entire book, is Larry dealing with the death of his mother, and like when she's starting to get sick, and he comes home, and it's like, in the whole apartment kind of takes on a whole new light. There's a section on page 189 of the Anchor Books edition. I think it's the recent one. I'm not going to keep hammering that. Like
is that the Poland 1945 thing you were talking about?
It is the Poland 1945 one. Here's how King describes the whole situation. Mom. That groan again. The apartment was dim. The day had grown dark very suddenly, and now there was thick thunder, and the sound of rain had swelled. The living room window was half open, the white curtains bellying out over the table, then being sucked back through the opening and into the air shaft beyond. There was a glistening wet patch on the floor where the rain had come in. Mom, where are you? And he starts hearing the groans, and he goes in there, and you just imagine this really, like, the fact that the sunlight just kind of just gets destroyed and like becomes a very dark room. And when he finally gets to his mother, this is how Larry describes it, King describes it through Larry's eyes. But the worst thing, the thing he never forgot, was the way her visible eye rolled up to look at him, like the eye of a hog in a slaughtering pen. Her face was bright with fever. Larry, it's just like, that whole sequence is so like. Because at that point, Larry realizes that everything is just going to shit, and it's not too long after he goes to he has what I think is Sting's best what I think is King's best stinger. Totally ruins this entire atmosphere, but because it's not too shortly after he sees like the Nightmare on Elm Street movie, and then it says like, oh, it'll be the last time anybody will see these. Freddy won't come back because nobody's making movies anymore. But you get this descent into isolation and abandonment with Larry, and that scene just peaks up big time. And I don't know,
I think he added this to. Well, no, I guess because the first Nightmare on Elm Street wasn't out in '78. Because he has that line about
84 was the first one.
Yeah, because he has that line about like, oh, and because I had a Roman numeral in front of it, he knew that Freddy would be back, but Freddy wouldn't. Real quick though, I don't think any of the Nightmare on Elm Streets have numerals. I think they have the regular integers.
You're correct.
Yeah.
Incorrect, or am I?
No, there's no Roman numeral. It's just the number 4.
But I do like that idea that because that's something I thought about in the book too. Like
he was thinking about Jason. He was.
I was going to say
exactly,
Friday the 13th had numerals.
Yeah. But it's just interesting because you do
Master of Horror.
Well, hey, it wasn't the internet back then, so you can't just Google it.
Something I think about a lot, like if the apocalypse did happen, is like, oh, most famous people would probably die, and you wouldn't know about it.
Well, Gene Shalit in this starts coughing on the screen.
I like it.
And
it's sad because Gene Shalit actually is dead now, right?
Yes,
and so
but he died in the Super.
But he
died of Captain Trips. So.
He was like Gene Shalit was like kind of annoyingly cheesy with his like silly puns and stuff. Going back to the scene with Larry's mom real quick. Sorry, I know I keep bringing up Bizarre Bad Dreams, but she says that line, "Go get your father, he's in the bar with that photographer." Now that's maybe something Larry didn't know at that point, like, oh, my dad cheated on my mom. And King in Bizarre Bad Dreams has a story about I won't say too much of what happens in it, but it involves a son taking his dad who's in a nursing home out for lunch.
Yeah.
And part part of what kicks off the kind of inciting incident in this story is that his dad starts talking about cheating on his mom, but in the same way that Larry's mom does, in kind of like that incoherent babbling kind of way. And they have this moment in the Bizarre Bad Dreams where that character stops and he tries to talk about it with his dad, but then he keeps himself. And King kind of comments about, like, in the prelude about how when people get old, like, they'll say these things that you maybe don't want to hear, you know, and they'll reveal things about themselves and their past that really hurts you as their kids. Like, you don't want to hear your dad's cheating on your mom or your mom's cheating on your dad or whatever. But, like, because his dad is, like Larry's not going to say to his mom, hey, I don't want to hear that, or, like, what do you mean? Like, he's not going to elaborate on it. And that was, I know it's not, like, a supernatural moment, but that was really frightening to me, this, like, hearing other bits of your family history.
Well, the dementia is terrifying. I
No,
think that's
exactly.
one of the scariest parts of the entire plague thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, because their brains are cooking in their head, they say.
Yeah, and they're saying these things.
It's like in Signs.
And they're saying these things in Larry's mom's case. Like, I don't think she's, like, making anything up. I think that probably did, like, her dad probably did do that a lot, and that is also hard. Like, you're dealing with the physical breakdown of your mom, but also this, like, history thing.
King loves doing that, though, because he does it in Pet Sematary also.
Yes, yeah.
You
we
know?
we get a chapter in book 1, at least in the expanded uncut edition, where we're in somebody's mind as they wake up and realize what's happening to them and slowly start to go back into delirium.
Oh, it's the guy who Flag makes get him the car and everything.
Bradenton, which is the weirdest chapter.
It's well written, like, and the stuff you're talking about is scary. It's weird because Flag.
No,
is
it doesn't have anything to do with
one?
Flag. It's one of the guest.
Oh,
station
Vic.
guys.
It's Vic
Yeah.
Palfrey.
That is very creepy.
Yeah, very,
I'd
because
forgotten about
he's
that.
trying so hard to maintain his grip on reality, and it's just like
Yeah.
diminishing.
Well, they talk about in the book how a lot of people, it seems like they're actually on the uptick and that they're actually getting over it. And then all of a sudden it hits them again really hard and they die. It's like this bug.
And that's like,
that
God,
go
that's
away.
so cruel.
Yeah.
Like, you think people are getting better.
That much crueler.
Yeah.
For me, I mean, I think all the personal horror really resonates because, you know, you can only imagine like that happening to like a family member, a mother, or something like that. But the House of Horror sequences, there are two of them. One is the Lincoln Tunnel, which was really captured well in the movie. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
The other one is Stu finally getting out Stovington.
Yes. Yeah.
That is terrifying.
And there's, I'm sure we'll agree here, but it's the line. He's leaving. You know, there's nobody. You know, we know where this is going. He's escaping. He's getting out. He's finally gonna get out. He's going down the stairwell, and all of a sudden, oh God! Stu was still staring out, transfixed, when the hand slipped out of the darkness of the stairwell and grasped his ankle. I gasped, tore at Stu's throat like a thorn. He looked around, his belly a freezing flow of ice, and beheld a bloody, grinning face upturned in the darkness. "Come down and eat chicken with me, beautiful," it whispered in a cracked and dying voice. "It's so dark." What the fuck?
That's such a weird
so
Kingism. I love
weird.
it.
They could have just done the whole thing like, come with us or stay with us, but God,
Well,
it's just
and I guess,
insane.
like, theoretically, if this guy is suffering the delirium,
Yeah,
and the
it's
dementia,
the delirium.
He might just be having
It's
some
word
memory.
scramble.
He might
It's
be
word
having
scramble.
some memory of, like, eating chicken with a date or something. But it's like so. The food element is so gross, and that's also the capper of a sequence that just in general is so terrifying.
Yeah.
Like, it sucks because in the comic book they gloss over that sequence, and they have the chicken guy and everything, but like it's just in like 2 pages, and they don't get, because in the book, on his way out, Stu sees a nurse that was nice to him, and the guy asks Stu to kill him, and he can't, and like the elevator that's like stuck with the gurney in it. It's just
Mick Garris does a great job with it.
That's my favorite scene. In
the film sequence does it really well.
It's the best part of the film, I think.
Yeah, I think so too.
But the thing I love about that chapter is that it captures the feeling of a nightmare really well. Like, when you're in a nightmare, you think you're gonna get to that point where you're safe, and it's just far enough away where you also feel like something's going to get you. Like the fact
and that happens near the end of his churning out.
But he's also scared. But you think it's going to be the other guy, the other doctor,
the
elder, And the haunting image of just this thing stumbling down. It's like what we always talk about. Like anything far away down a hallway is terrifying.
Yeah.
Like it's like the It Follows thing. In that sequence is just like the whole time you think like, oh God, what's gonna pop out? What's gonna pop out? And like the whole like meandering hallways and not being able to find your way out.
A
is
hospital.
Just so.
When
like,
Stu's never been outside that room, really. I mean, I guess when he got brought in, maybe, but he doesn't, because That's part of what's
He
scary
doesn't
too.
remember being brought
He
in.
keeps just kind of going, all right, I guess I'm going to go this way. And that is scary because he does find the stairs and he sees the exit sign and this chicken guy happens. And the guy, we'll touch on this in adaptations, but like the guy delivers that line so well in the movie. I have no idea who that actor is.
I don't know who it is.
He says it like, come down and eat chicken, it'll be beautiful.
I'm going to
So
make it
it's
my
like-
mission to find out who that dude is and give a
Please
detailed
do.
history of his filmography.
And let me know if he's...
It's probably like Toby Hooper.
Yeah,
Nick
yeah.
Harris has all these directors.
Let me know if
Toby Jones. It's Toby Jones.
Oh,
who you
I
didn't
love Toby
recognize.
Jones. Love Toby Jones.
Was Elder a doctor?
So the thing in the book, and
Because it's Dietz in the movie, and he's a doctor. but
Dietz in the movie, and he's another interesting character in the book because, or sorry, Denninger, because they.
Well, no, there's Denninger and
Dietz,
Dietz.
which is
That's
the one where we
weird.
get the POV chapter. That's Denninger, right? I can't remember. Either way,
Who was the one that was played by our
Max
favorite
Wright.
Max Wright?
The
that
guy-
was Denninger.
The guy played by Max is Denninger, who I think in the book he's another Starkey type character. We see a POV chapter and like he actually is kind of sympathetic towards everyone, but he's still doing bad things.
Yeah.
So Elder, and this they consolidate all this in the movie, which makes sense. But like in the book, Stu gets moved from the CDC in Atlanta to Stovington because Atlanta has just become a shit show. And once he gets to Stovington, Dietz and Denninger are presumably dead. All the rest of them are whatever. And this new guy is checking on him, and Stu knows that he's not a doctor; he's military because he has a gun or has an escort with a gun, and that's Elder. So I think the idea of Elder is that he's just like a button man for the military. He's not interested in studying Stu. Like he knows he's gonna like.
I think the
show him.
POV chapter is Dietz.
I think you're right. Yeah.
So mine is one of those quick like flash fiction moments that Randall talked about. In Duluth, a man in khaki shorts and sandals walked up and down Piedmont Avenue with a large smear of ash on his forehead and a hand-lettered sandwich board hanging over his scrawny shoulders. The front read, "The time of the disappearance is here. Christ the Lord returns soon. Prepare to meet your God." The back read, "Behold, the hearts of the sinners were broken. The great shall be abased, and the abased made great. The evil days are at hand. Woe to thee, O Zion." 4 young men in motorcycle jackets, all of them with bad coughs and runny noses, set upon the man in the khaki shorts and beat him unconscious with his own sandwich board. Then they fled, one of them calling back hysterically over his shoulder, "Teach you to scare people, teach you to scare people, you half-baked freak."
Yeah.
Just like got me right in the pit of my stomach.
And that recalls back to the Monster
Shouter.
Shouter
totally.
in New York, and how Larry finds his body stabbed to death.
Well, because if you think like, and we see this more in New York than the other chapters, in the event of the apocalypse like this, you would have a lot of people doing crazy shit and just looting and murdering and whatever else. And if they hear some like loud, crazy personality, what's to stop them from doing that?
I love them saying "teach you to scare people."
Yeah.
like that's
Especially
so interesting.
knowing that they're all also going to die,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because they all have colds.
Yeah.
So just needlessly,
Yeah.
like anybody is going to be more scared.
Yeah, no, totally.
It's just,
Especially if they
it's
bring in the
tiny,
whole-
like 3 paragraphs and it's perfect.
The religious guilt aspect too of and like
Yeah.
fuck, I don't want to hear it. Yeah.
I think for me, I have to be honest. I don't know if I have a specific moment. The thing I noticed on this reread that I did not get to me in this way before. Once again, because I think I took my dad's comments to heart of like, oh no, everything's fine when you're a kid. But just it was a different kind of terror than reading Night Shift well, that's not true because some of the apocalyptic stuff in Night Shift got to me in this way. But for the most part, the books we've covered so far, The Stand Book 1, just in general this time around, it was horrific, but it was anxiety is the best way I could describe it. It was just this general feeling, and then this goes away in books 2 and 3 as it becomes more supernatural, which, like you guys said, is not as scary to me. There are still scary elements in books 2 and 3, and I still overall like it as a book, but Book 1 just showing how things break down so quickly, and there's just a powerlessness I think felt among not necessarily the people who survived, but the people who are dying.
Well, even the people that survived too. Though.
Yeah, because they don't really realize what's going on until later on, and so. I think just that, I don't know, I guess my choice for The Cemetery is just that overall feeling of powerlessness and very palpable anxiety that I don't know if that's because I just wasn't old enough to like really understand the ramifications of what was going on in the book, or if it's like I said, our current political climate or whatever else, but like I felt very freaked out reading Book 1.
I really think it has to do with the current political climate.
I think so too.
That's all I can think about.
Yeah.
Is that like if this did happen right now under this administration, we are so fucked. Because they're not going to know what to do, and they're going to lie their fucking heads off because they've already done it. So why wouldn't they?
Well, and you assume that most administrations would lie, but this one would lie and be really bad at it.
Yes, and aggressive about it too. You know, So anyway,
I mean, there's a lot of. I think that anxiety also comes to the fact that like King is really good at just showing the brutality of that.
Well, human
lack
beings,
of order.
really, yeah.
I mean, like even just the way he describes where the bodies go. I mean, there's like that one thing where they use pitchforks on the bodies and like all of
they dump them into the Boston Harbor.
Off the bridge or something onto a passing.
I just think book 1 is much more psychological, and then you got book 2, which is just much more physical.
Speaking of physical.
Oh! I'm hungry for some pound cake.
After all you've been taught, everyone isn't bad, Mama. Everything isn't a sin.
Come to your closet and pray. Ask to be forgiven.
He's a nice boy, Mom. You like him. You really like him, Mama.
So, Allison, kick this off.
This is just like a little public service announcement because I think that so far, the 9,000 pages of this 20,000 page book that I've read, is like a remarkable work of fiction. But I just think to you, ye aspiring novelists out there, particularly if ye are male, just imagine that when you're writing, and you're writing, say, a general who's just been relieved of duty and has to deal with the guilt of potentially being responsible for the death of thousands and thousands of American citizens, and you're wandering into it like a death bunker in this incredible chapter that's a remarkable piece of prose, that you imagine reading what you've written out loud to an audience of one, and that audience is me, and I'm sitting there, just imagine the look on my face. I'm going to make the look, and then you see if you can hear it, and the look is like...
Oh, wait.
Right?
Okay.
So when you get to the part where this general who's preparing to die has to debate whether or not he's going to reach down and touch a dead woman's breasts, just imagine my face and decide if you should include it. And then apply that to all other sections and think, is this necessary? Is it going to deepen the story? Is it going to further the world? Is it going to heighten my fucking fiction? And if it's not, maybe you take it out. Maybe you take the dead woman's breasts out.
I feel that I praise that scene. I like the.
It's not easily my favorite chapter
exactly
in book 1.
what you're talking
but
about.
Jesus fucking Christ! Just think: do we need these tits? Are these tits necessary tits?
Guys,
and if they're not necessary tits, then take out the tits.
But I think Stephen King always errs on the side of necessary tits.
Yeah. Tits are always necessary in King's world.
Just picture the face, and assign the face with like your favorite smart woman who doesn't accept your bullshit, and picture her listening to you read it out loud. And imagine her face. That's my warning to you.
Like, we like to joke about when we talk about Pound Cake that, like, when Stephen King writes it, that he's at his computer being like, ooh, Stevie's being bad.
Or in this case, the typewriter. He's like, I want to make these 4 hours of writing today count.
And so I have a part where it sounds like he literally lost control of himself as he was writing, and it's when he's talking about Fran, and it's like a very early Fran chapter, and he's like describing her, and I think are we? Yeah. Mike and I have the same one.
It's the first one. No, you go for it. You take the honors if you want.
Yeah. Well, let me see yours. She was a tall girl with chestnut hair that fell halfway down the back of her buff-colored shirt she was wearing. Good figure, long legs that got appreciative glances. Prime stuff, in italics, was the correct frat house term, she believed. Looky, here comes Miss Nookie. Miss College Girl 1990. It's like he can't stop.
But again, that's an example of him poking fun, quote unquote, like in Jerome and this Mercedes.
But
that's okay because I'm saying these people are saying it.
But it keeps going.
Wait, he could have, even the prime stuff line is a little silly.
Prime
stuff. But if he had stopped there, you're like, okay. But then looky, okay, Steve.
Miss College Girl 1990.
Oh, and rest assured, his obsession with testicles, as we saw in The Shining, continues here. We saw how Dick Halloran's testicles shriveled up a little bit in the winter. He says on page 37, the skin crawl that had started near the base of his testicles and was now working up into his belly. Like, he's just, the things that he's obsessed with bowel movements, which we're really going to talk about.
It's like breasts, bowel movements, and testicles.
Loves them.
And it's weird because characters are, I guess you're kind
It's
of
the
always
3 Bs. Breasts, bowel movements, and balls.
Well, we've got to find some sort of addition because there's also the movement of body parts in people who are overweight.
Yes.
So bubbling.
Yeah.
Let's say bubbling.
Joggling.
Well, but then it's a
Bees,
bee.
bees.
Oh yes, you're right.
Or
you're
the
right.
poet's pot. Is that a belly?
Poet's pot.
He says that on like page 331. I'm like,
Well,
what the fuck is that?
it's funny you bring that up because he and this actually goes. This is like really weird. So he talks frequently about in the early chapters Harold's hips and ass like jiggling like a
Joggling.
girl's.
It's joggling.
Joggling like a girl's when he runs. Now this is weird because Justin and I read the It script for the It adaptation, which may or may not be that used.
We talked about it on the last
you
episode.
guys have any evil tweets now. Cary Fukunaga and whoever the co-writer is, I can't remember. He describes Ben Hanscom, who's the overweight character in It, running. Now this is in the script, not in the book.
No.
Now, I'm sure Stephen King does this in the book, but they go to great lengths in this script about 3 or 4 times when they describe the losers running away. It's just like, oh, the losers run, like Ben's ass jiggling like a girl, and I'm like, what? Like why? Like why are you even if this is in It? Like why are you putting this in here?
I'm
It's
just
so-
making that face
Yeah.
so hard.
it's very bizarre, and like I said, there are things that I mean, in many ways, I will always love the way Stephen King writes about sex because it's so distinct and weird, and like I think the reason Pound Cake is such a hit with your listeners is because we've read Stephen King. They're just every book has like some head scratching, like what the fuck is he talking about? And like, the 3 Bs, boobs, testicle, or was it
boobs, balls, and breasts. Or no, boobs, balls, and bowel movements.
Like the bowel movements, I can somewhat see because like everyone's aware of their like own internal functions and makeup, and especially when you're scared, I guess. I've never felt
Apparently,
like
every character in the Stephen King universe is well aware that they're going to shit their pants.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
This
and
is
like
true.
Or
even-
piss their pants. We get some pants.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, that's
yeah.
true.
And there's some the testicles thing. Maybe also if you're a guy, I guess you would feel that, but it is where it comes up a lot. But it does seem like every character is aware of breasts, like in a way that is just kind of I got a little breast.
Like everybody's boobs. Just like there's just boobs
I'll-
everywhere.
If you're an old woman, you usually have like a full matronly bosom. And if you're I have a boob part I kind of love, and
Please
it's actually
read.
this is actually designed to be funny, and I think it is funny, and I don't know why it made me laugh so hard when I read it because it has to do with Doc Soames' relationship with Sheriff
Oh
Deputy,
yeah, no, this is great.
which I actually like. I love their relationship, and
it's folksy.
it's very folksy is a great word for it, and like this actually I think described their kind of like casual ribbing.
Yeah.
Kind of describes their relationship. So this is when Doc Soames is in the sheriff's office and he wants to check up his body, I guess, to see if he's sick or not. So here we go. And the whole time he's just like ribbing John Baker about how he actually needs to lose some weight and everything. So this is what Doc Soames says to John Baker. Baker had warmed out of his undershirt. There, what'd I tell you? Soames asked. Ain't he got a set of knockers on him? Even an old shit like me could get horny looking at that. Like, I don't know why that, like, I thought that was so funny. Like, this old guy, like, and I was picturing the guy from the movie who's the dinosaur guy from Mrs.
Yes,
Doubtfire.
oh my God.
I almost, like, just wish there was some deleted scene that they couldn't air on ABC of him saying that to Troy Evans. It just, like, cracked me up. I thought that was really funny.
I pictured Wilford Brimley.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I don't know why, but I just did.
Which is even better if you're
But it feels the reason that feels different to me is that you can understand why that doctor would want to lighten the mood because
It's a
the
serious
man's
thing,
wife
yeah.
is concerned about his health and they're in a prison and he's trying to
Exactly.
make him comfortable, and so that's what we call bedside manner. And
Yeah.
if bedside manner takes the form of man boob jokes, then
I love it.
Oh
I love
my
it.
God.
I just
Wilford.
I picture Wilford being like, "Oh, we're an old shit like."
Oh, little shit like me. Watch Clark.
Anyway, what
Watch
other
Clark.
pound cake do we got? I actually think there's more pound cake. in
There's-
this
I have-
series.
I have-
Mike,
so
has,
much.
Mike has, I think, 15 bullet points. I'm not kidding. I can only imagine you at home, like looking for a pin. Like, oh my God, there's a testicle.
There
Kevin,
is.
my wife, give me a pin.
My wife, my son.
Well, even It's like the way Stephen King is when he writes the Pound Cake. That's when when he finds it, he's like, ooh.
Look, I read a lot of The Stand while walking to work, which is about a 3-mile walk from my house. So I'll read it, and like if I don't have a pen, I just like curl the little pages.
Yeah, dog ears.
And it's in my back. As I'm reading, I keep thinking like, don't forget to get that pen when you get to the office. You got it. So there's like
get the Pound Cake pen.
But I put PC at the top of my book, like like all the
Politically
time.
correct?
No, just Pound Cake.
I know, I'm just kidding.
And so like there's a bunch that I have on here.
Yeah, just rattle them down.
So like on page 15, we already mentioned the Prime Stuff line. Page 37 was the obsession with the testicles. 56, which is when Larry notices the bosom of his mother. Her bosom was still the same large comber blooming out of that bodice of the dress, a little larger if anything. Mom, tell me the truth. Has your bosom gotten bigger? Is that the fundamental change? Like, okay.
Well, he goes so far with it. He could just say, "Oh, his mom." Hey, mom, is your bosom?
On page 80, on page 80, there's some plentiful breasts, whatever that means.
Does that mean more than 2? I don't know.
Oh, yeah, maybe it's not a Total Recall thing. It came out in 1990, I think, right?
Think Futurama.
Oh God. Okay. So this is the best one. This is the one I think I pretty much text everyone when what was it? Okay. On page 101, Larry's sleeping with the woman that he has a one-night stand with. The oral hygienist came in, wearing a pink nylon half-slip and nothing else. Hi, Larry, she said. She was short, pretty in a vague Sandra Dee sort of way, and her breasts pointed at him perkily without a sign of a sag. What was the old joke? That's right, loot. She had a pair of 38s and a real gun. Haha, very funny. He had come over 3,000 miles to spend the night being eaten alive by Sandra Dee.
And he says the word gob. He says the word gobble.
Yes.
But there's also the line about oral hygienist, or specialty was oral, something like that.
Oh yeah. Oh gosh, where is that one?
It's
around this area. But he does, the gobbled. He goes, being gobbled means never having to say you're sorry. Haha. Jesus, I am going crazy.
I love the ha-has.
Yeah.
While you look for the other one, I have a Larry one.
Larry's
that's later. This is post. This is actually right before he finds Rita's dead body.
Yeah.
But he's like, he sings it's the 4th of July, and he sings the Star Spangled Banner as he's pissing.
Oh yeah.
And he says he finished with a snappy salute at the building he thought might be the Bennington Courthouse, then turned around thinking the best way to start another year of independence in the good old U.S. of A. would be with a good old all-American fuck. Yeah. And then later he went back to the tent, then hesitated for a moment. Maybe he ought to let her sleep. Maybe she was worn out. But he looked down at old Sparky, and old Sparky didn't really want to let her sleep. Singing the old Star Spangled Banana had turned him right on. So Larry turned back the tent flap and crawled in.
Oh, that's not the only name he's got for his Johnson. He says at one point, he's talking about his John Thomas.
Wait, this might be book 2, so I won't. Is him discovering the barn? That's book 2, right?
Book 2.
That's book 2.
I love one of my favorite Larry Pound Cake moments is in there.
Well, as we keep going, there's get the honeydew melon on page 243.
The honeydew melon.
Wait, who's that in reference to?
I don't remember.
Mother Abigail.
It's Dr. Soames. So he goes.
Doc Soames.
Doc Soames. So he. He goes. He lurched back and forth along the porch after Nick like a zombie in a third-rate horror picture. His crotch had swelled terribly. His underpants looked as if someone had stuffed a honeydew melon.
Oh, that's kind of creepy. We should, as always, King does have a lot of bodily function and like.
Oh no, this was somebody that ran out of the house.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah, King does. I mean, that's the beauty of King. He can be so crass and gross and misguided with Pound Cake, but there are moments like that where it's actually like. Kind of disturbing,
That whole moment's actually really disturbing because that man, he runs out of his house, he's obviously sick, Nick watches him, the man shakes his fist weakly and crawls back inside, not bothering to shut the door.
Correction, the man that teaches Nick how to do all of his reading and writing and arithmetic, is named Rudy. Not the same Rudy, different Rudy.
What can I say, guys?
Good memory.
Thank you. No, well, there are a few characters I noticed, like throughout the book. Like, there's a couple dicks. There's like a lot
of dicks.
Hey,
but no,
that's pound cake for you.
which I do kind of like, because I used to be super. I used to be really against. I used to be really against. I'm like, oh, why do these characters have the same name? I'm like, but theoretically, if this happened, although there is like, you point this out. There's like Heck Drogan, then like Whitney, Dorgan or
Dorgan. There's like Barry
like,
Dorgan and then Whitney Drogan or something like that.
Yeah.
It's something, or Horgan. It's something like that.
Yeah.
It's like why? Like why?
I mean, there's a lot more that they had. Like, at one point, there's on 332, Bitch Kitty is named
Pants Wedding Girl
on 359. The weirdest thing, though, and this is the last one I'm going to add on there, is the whole Bradenton chapter. Now, Bradenton is this character that Flag employs basically with weird dreams to bring him a car, which makes no sense anyway.
Why would Flag need? Why couldn't he just get a car himself?
Well, the thing that's perplexing to me is that there aren't really any, there are no gay characters in this book, and like the only one that is
Dana eventually.
Well, Dana,
kind
in a sense,
but
which they all make a big deal out of that one.
Yeah,
right? Stu does at least.
Oh, yeah. We'll get to that in book.
But we'll get to that in book too. But the weird thing with Bradenton is that it's almost like he's evil for these kind of these indulgences. Like they basically are like his like homosexuality is almost like an indulgence.
They present it as being very
like
grotesque,
a vice
kind of.
Yeah, and like so he discusses like about having this boy that comes into his room that is he's wearing lemon yellow bikini briefs which cling lovingly to every ridge and hollow of his precious buttocks, and you know if he turns his face will be like Raphael Angel, and he will be hung like the Lone Ranger's wolf. Hi-oh, Silver.
It's like Behind the Candelabra, like Matt Damon or something.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. It's just a very weird, bizarre chapter that's pretty superfluous to the rest of the story.
Logistically, and it's funny too because we only really have one real full like Flag encounter in this book. Well, I mean by full like fully dealt in book one, and then they have that chapter. So it's like we don't even know Flag that well yet, and all we know about him is that he's this kind of like nebulous, like faceless, powerful being. And then he needs this guy to help him get a car? Like, it's so weird.
It's a weird chapter.
I just sort of assumed that it was more emotional devastation. Like, taking people and bending them to his will because he can.
He's just kind of,
he's just bored.
It is weird, though, that we start with this character who we haven't met before, and, like, there's this gay fantasy that kind of, like,
it's supposed to be looked at in a weird way.
Flag invades, it's very strange.
I've got another real quick one-off, and it's not pound cake so much as just a sentence that I really like that could... whatever. And it's, those boys are more dildos than desperados.
Oh, man. That's pound cake. Who says that? Is that a...
Baker! God damn it, I love Sheriff John Baker.
Baker's a shit heel, and I like it.
I love it. I have a funny story. When I was a kid, I was on vacation, and I was with my best friend, Matt, and it was his dad and my dad, and they were driving us in the van, and we were in the back seat, and a Guns N' Roses song came on. And my dad goes, Guns N' Roses sucks. And then I go, what, Slash? And I was like 8 years old or something. It's like, Slash is the best guitarist in the world. And my dad goes, I think my dad had a few beers, and he goes, Slash is a dildo.
Well, you hear it. I mean,
it was so funny.
Like using that as like an insult, like as like.
It was so, and my dad like knew he was goofing. Like he was just kind of drunk. I think it was the funniest fucking thing.
So funny.
Like I still like quote it back at him to this day. But I have one other pound cake, and this one, it's not even like that much of a pound cake. It's like what's written is not super offensive. It's just like the way it's like right at the end of book one when Stu meets Fran and Harold is being really aggressive and being like, Stu, like stay away from her, and Stu rolled his sleeve back down without replying. It was the girl, of course. Harold had gotten used to the idea of owning her. Well, some girls could be owned and some could not. This one looked like the latter type. She was tall and pretty and very fresh looking.
Burn it all down! Burn it all down! Burn it down!
Well, and I will say,
like he's criticizing Harold for like objectifying a woman,
but then
he ends it by saying she was tall and pretty and very fresh.
And do you remember like
fresh is a very bizarre way to describe a woman.
Do you remember right after that? And once again, I chalk it up to I hope to chalk it up to like the sign of the times. He pulls Harold aside, and look now Stu is right in that Franny is like not going to take Harold's shit. And like Alice was saying, Franny is like a really strong female character in this, but. And I do think for the most part, especially in book 2, I mean, although it kind of drives me nuts sometimes, their relationship, just because it's so, like, annoying, Stu and Fran, but, like, for the most part, Stu actually is a pretty progressively minded male in terms of their like, dynamic together, but when we and maybe this is just that Arnett text that's coming out in him, but in that first moment where he read out, he pulls Harold aside, and he has a line, like, I'm paraphrasing, but he says something like, you know, like, if you're a man and, like, you want a woman and she doesn't want you, you have a choice between, like, trying to take her by force or just going home and jerking off or something. I see what King's trying to do there, and once again, it ties back to good intentions, you know, but Stu could have just said to Harold, like, hey, I'm not going to encroach on if you have a thing go with Fran, but at the same time, she's her own woman, and you need to let her make her decision.
Which is pretty much what Mick Garris does in them.
Exactly. It's a good adaptation choice,
yeah.
And once again, it's telling that in both the comic and Mick Garris' movie, they were like, hey, let's. I mean, King wrote that screenplay, and he probably looked at that and was like, maybe I should.
I think they're both ways of Stu going down to Harold's level, so Harold can understand him.
That's actually a good point, though. That is, because Stu...
He's trying to, like,
and he does
prop up Harold by talking.
He's talking to a 16.
I'll say it again. Touche.
I think we've all had our filling of pound cake.
And this isn't even there's more pound cake in
There's
in
more
part
to
2.
come,
I would say,
baby.
I think part 2, many
tons,
a much bigger piece.
I've got so much pound
much
cake.
bigger pan of pound cake.
I'm gonna toss the pan over to you guys for book 2 and book 3.
Yeah, I've got plenty.
There's not a lot in book 3.
But book 2, I think most of the pound cake comes at the tail end of chapters, and I do mean the tail end. I mean
with
last line.
Stu and Franny forever.
Boy.
So that leads us to take a look at the broader world of King's work in a section we like to call King's Dominion.
There's another world out there.
I know there is.
I have one I want to kick off with that I actually found really exciting because it was a reference to a book that I really love that most people really hate. And also I would say that I really love it in memory, and I don't want to like really cling to that stance because when I reread it, we'll see where I'm at.
You keep looking at me.
Well, I know you don't like it, but
exactly what you're saying.
well, no, there's a reference. Franny mentions a woman who lives in Haven, Maine, who writes westerns, which is a reference to the Tommyknockers and one of the main characters in the Tommyknockers.
Bobby.
And this predates
Bobby, yeah. And this, maybe.
Well,
the thing was, that was probably an update to the rewrite.
Maybe.
Yeah, because he had written Tommyknockers by the time he did the updated version.
Well, I thought you do like Tommyknockers a little bit.
You know, it's funny. I've read that book twice.
Yeah.
And it's always great until the last quarter.
Uh-huh.
It falls apart.
And when it falls apart, it falls apart.
But the thing is, like, I still think the final couple pages are fucking beautiful.
They are.
And I'm going to stand by it.
Like, I agree with that.
You're going to stand by it?
I'm going to stand by that.
Okay, so...
I'm dead. I died.
Rest in peace, Allison. What do you have, though? I'm curious, Mike. Obviously, there's the Randall Flagg connection.
Yeah, and which I think we should talk in
We'll
book
talk
3.
about that later.
I think book 3 is a good one,
Yeah.
especially with the ending. But the only thing I could find was on page 218, there's a reference to Flagg being in Dallas with Oswald, which is kind of interesting because
I remember that.
I thought of that too.
You know, and it's interesting because like 11/22/63, the seeds of that book go back to the 70s. So, you know.
Well, and Flagg's in the adaptation.
Yeah, so, you know.
Oh, is he on the show?
You see him, I mean, people assume.
Oh, you guys mentioned that, yeah.
Wait.
Somebody.
Explain that. I haven't heard that.
So in the Hulu adaptation, it's like an Easter egg. It's
Well,
not
I
a
watched
real
it, but
thing.
I didn't catch the Easter egg.
So when they're in Dallas, there's this brief moment where you see essentially like an extra walk past, but you know it's Randall Flagg. Like it's just kind of dark, menacing.
It just
the whole
really
thing.
looks like him.
Do they do anything with like?
It's much better than when they're running through the book depository and it says red rum on the wall.
I remember that, and
that one I went. Ugh.
I think I looked at Jen and I did like a.
Yeah.
But I do like, if we're talking about that, I do like the Captain Trips.
Yeah.
When he goes back to. Well, we're spoiling stuff about 11/22/63.
We'll get there in 9 years.
But I just think it was interesting that would be, you know, obviously King gets this the conceit of Randall Flagg lies in the Sympathy for the Devil song.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's pretty much just that concept of the devil being there, evil just always dwelling on huge chaotic events in history.
Yeah.
And Flagg definitely, that's like pretty much the conceit of Flagg right there. So it makes sense that they would choose the Kennedy thing, but it's kind of cool in hindsight now to be like, well, maybe he was part of the whole chaos that's going on in 11/22/63.
It is interesting how they paint Flagg in that one chapter they have in this book, in that he has sort of been present at like every chaotic event from the 60s onward. Now, something that's interesting is that he says he thinks he was born during the Civil Rights Movement, but then he says, but he does remember growing up in Nebraska and going to school with someone named Charles Starkweather, who, as we know, is the serial killer that is the kid who we'll get to in book 2. Is supposed to be the reincarnation of. And something else that they talk about in book 2 is that I won't spoil too much of the events that happen, but even though Kid presents himself as somewhat of an oppositional force to Flagg, there are also a few hints that Flagg actually sent him to do that, to sway the Trash Can Man. So that's interesting. The book connects to itself in its own way in that weird way. But something I was wondering is, now, to be clear, and I know this is confirmed, spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't read the Dark Tower books or Eyes of the Dragon. In the Dark Tower, the gunslinger in the first book, Roland is chasing the Man in Black across the desert, who Walter Odin, who of course ends up being Randall Flagg, as we find out later. That's a retcon move because when King originally wrote that, he did not have that as Randall Flagg. So I'm wondering this whole because when he says, he thinks he was born in the Civil Rights Movement, although he remembers talking to Charles Starkweather, I'm wondering if at that point he still considered him separate from the Dark Tower. At the same time, though, him not remembering where he came from would very much be in line with how Randall Flagg is in the other books, because he kind of wakes up in these other worlds sometimes. And
with supernatural beings in general.
Exactly, yeah. And he's just purely this agent of chaos. He wakes up, he knows his intent is to cause these problems. And that's why I love that Flagg in the book. He's marched with both black activists and with the Ku Klux Klan. He doesn't really care. He doesn't really care how the chaos happens. He just wants it to happen. He probably doesn't even care that. But I don't think they confirmed this. But I wouldn't be surprised if he's stoking the press, revealing all the plague stuff, because he probably loves that Ray Flowers is doing that, and then at the same time he loves that the army is shutting it down. But going back to just the idea of King's Dominion, there are definitely some things I noticed later on, and obviously
we'll definitely go over it in 2 and 3.
We talked about this in the Night Shift episode. There, the Hemingford home is mentioned in Children of the Corn, and and we think that there are theories that maybe Flagg is he who walks behind the rose, which we'll have someone on the podcast later who might have some thoughts on that too. But let's see.
That's called a teaser.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because Flagg is such a big connection to the rest of King's Dominion, and I think this is maybe the first time the connection became this explicit in the Wastelands of the Dark Tower. Once again, spoiler alert if you haven't read that book. They stumble across an alternate reality version of Captain Trips, because they find a plagued out America, but it's in a different year than
and they have the headlines and stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. So and I don't think they know that, but the readers know that, and that's where they first I think that's the first book where they confirm that Flagg is.
Part of me that felt like a Prometheus sort of thing, where it was just why does he have it in the same year?
Yeah.
And the whole thing, what do you, this whole idea of it being an alternate time?
It's all the different beams.
Should have just been the regular world of the Stand. And then that would have been enough. It's already an Easter egg to the Stand.
Mac, he talks about different beams a lot, the beam of the rack, and all this stuff. I do like the idea of there being different beams and there are different worlds, but I would just be fine with it being okay, the world of the Stand is one world.
Yes.
The world of Christine is another. You know what I mean? And maybe they're connected. It does get a little tricky when you get into there are infinite versions of the Stand.
Yeah.
That's kind of.
And I understand that that's that's part of the mystery of their worlds in these thing, but just don't get too crazy.
There's a larger.
We'll definitely dive into that.
The
Wasteland,
especially the third
45 years.
Third book for sure.
There's a larger. I don't know. This sort of fits into King's Dominion, but one of the things I found very striking was that when Randall Flagg, is first introduced, he's wearing a pin that has a pig on it, and he talks about pigs a couple times. I remember there's like several references, and then later when Tom Cullen is under hypnosis, he's talking about Randall Flagg, and he says he has the name of 1,000 demons. Jesus knocked him into a herd of pigs once. His name is Legion, and that's a reference to the Gospels when Jesus casts out a demon and sends it into a herd of pigs, and they run off a mountain, and then they all die. And the demon says before he casts it out, "My name is Legion," and for we are many. And it's a classic biblical phrase, that sort of represents how one demon equals a million demons, and so that's actually a really. And so the fact that he had a pig pin on, I remember being struck from moment one about that. And also because Mother Abigail describes Randall Flagg as the devil's imp.
Yeah, because they make it clear that he's not Satan, but he's probably in league with Satan.
And that's what I think is interesting, is that in the world of this book, it exists in a very religious world, in a Christian world, in the sense that they're referencing demons from the Bible and the idea of a devil, a Christian devil. But as we see in the world of Randall Flagg later, he sort of transcends religion in a lot of ways. And I think that's something to talk about later, but I think that is an interesting thing to touch on.
It's this idea of, because he's able to go from mid-world to all worlds, he can kind of spot these other beings who further his purpose of chaos. And maybe it's funny to think of Randall Flagg, even though he's serving Satan. The idea that he spotted Satan, he's ooh, I'm going to link up with him. And we'll save this probably for Win Through the Keyhole and when we talk about Dark Tower, but you find out later on, and there's a lot of debate among Stephen King's fandom of whether or not this was a strong choice, but you find out a lot later on about exactly where Randall Flagg did come from, and his childhood and some other stuff, which is interesting because that had, I remember Robin's shaking his head. Mike,
I hate prequel sort of mythology.
Yeah, and it does take. It is weird to think of Randall Flagg of he's actually this flesh and blood person who had a childhood. I do like it more when he's a force. Anyway. That's for down the line.
That's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
But, so I think that wraps it up for King's Dominion. Let's just talk about our final thoughts on Book 1.
Dad, can we go now?
You ready?
Yeah, we've been ready for an hour.
Okay, I'll be right there.
You said that a half hour ago. Yeah, my dad's weird. He gets like that when he's writing.
I'll kick it off. I think that Book 1 is a fantastic piece of post-apocalyptic, almost apocalyptic storytelling, because we're watching the apocalypse unfold. And I think that Dan described it really well when he described it as very anxious. There is a lot of spooky shit in this book, but it's a fear that is born more out of anxiety than it is out of the supernatural or scares of that regard. And I think this is the longest of the 3 books that we're going to be talking about. Yeah, well, it's 500. It's about 475 pages.
Book 2 feels longer.
The book 2 feels a lot longer, and we'll talk all about that. But it's I think Book 1 is it does a really great job of building character, building a world, setting up a conflict. And then kind of laying the foundation for a story that is, while solid, it does become occasionally shaky. The foundation is laid, and it's a powerful foundation, but almost not strong enough to support what comes after in some ways. And that's coming from somebody who loves this book, but I'm just talking about based on my reread. So, but I think that, but I'm somebody who loves ensemble storytelling. Mm-hmm. So I really love this book because I love the introduction of new characters and then watching characters come together. And we see a lot of that happen in this book. So that's just sort of my basic thoughts on this. But what do you think, Dan?
I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's my favorite of the 3, and I think a lot of it comes down to taste. I mean, I'm just drawn more to the apocalyptic stuff. Yeah. And I'm someone who's much more afraid of government conspiracies and disease than a religious, like a holy war, essentially, which is what this book ends up becoming. And that's not bad, because I still do like the book on a whole, and I'm still rereading Book 3. But I think Book 1 just has a moral complexity that kind of goes away with the later ones. And to your point about the ensemble, I love that it focuses on so many different people, and King balances that so well. Yeah. Whereas as the book goes on and everything starts to winnow, he chooses like a handful of characters to focus on, which totally makes sense. I get it. But I think he achieves a scope of worldwide destruction in this that I don't know if he's matched even later in his career. The Stand is not my favorite book by Stephen King, but like you said, I think that Justin said earlier, that book one to me is just so, as an adult especially, made me feel nervous in a way that was
in terms of pure world building. I almost feel like the only other book that really achieves what he's done here is Under the Dome.
And
that's only a town. That's not a world. But
Salem's Lot.
I think like Salem's Lot, Under the Dome, and It do that.
Well, the whole Dark Tower.
But like you guys said, that's town building.
Needful Things does a good job.
Needful Things.
We'll get to all that.
But that's town building. This is world building. I like what you're saying with like all these little vignettes, and I know that a lot of those are specific to the uncut version. I'm so impressed by it, and I just like, you almost get spoiled. I mean, it's such a generous book in that first book, and then the scope is a little narrower, and we have some flaws that we'll talk about later on. But I love book one.
Again, haven't actually really gotten that far into book two yet. So who knows? I'll say this. I'm glad to know that you all seem to like this one best.
Yeah.
Because now my expectations are tempered.
That's good.
Because I really loved what I've read so far.
Yeah.
And I would rather know that this is the high point.
Yeah.
Than be a little bit let down.
I really do think it depends on your background and beliefs and other stuff. It's like, it's not that like you said, the more faith-based stuff is bad necessarily. Just it takes a very specific viewpoint.
I don't know. It's like it's like the faith-based aspect. I don't think it's as clear-cut as maybe it seems, and that's something we'll talk about later. I would say I think that there's a lot of. I think it's going to go places you're not expecting, and that's kind of what's so fun about it.
There's a shift for sure.
Yeah, it's like I'm really excited to hear your thoughts as a first-time reader on books 2 and 3. They're certainly not bad. They're just like it's such a shift, and but there's things that in those books that are more powerful than anything.
And I've only noticed, honestly, I'm only noticing any kind of flaws within The Stand. Reading this for the fifth time as a 32-year-old man, so I think that also is a testament to how strong it is. Man, I didn't have any feelings, any of the kind of flaws I'm pointing out. I didn't feel when I was younger, even when I was 25 and younger. Anyway, Joe, you, Justin.
Again, book one for me is the strongest section of any Stephen King novel.
Yeah.
For me, I'm much more interested in all the chaos than. I don't want to spoil anything else.
No, I don't care.
But book one, I'm saying for the listeners who are reading along too. I mean,
of course.
Book one is just, it blows away the books that follow, in my opinion. The characters are amazing, and you guys said everything else really that I can really say about it. In terms of the characterization and the world building, it's just remarkable.
And the hot sex.
And the pound cake, of course.
Book two beats book one for pound cake. Let's be real.
Pound for pound, book two.
What I found actually compelling about this read was that I am actually, The Stand has so many ties to the zombie genre. The zombie drama. The zombie genre.
Sting.
And Jen. Yeah, and Sting. But it has a lot of, it ties that genre in the sense that, we're watching Apocalypse going down, and just the idea, the corpses themselves even look like dead zombies in a way. Just like the way that they kind of, King animates them.
The bloated,
in some sort of
tube neck.
Yeah, the tube neck, the sweet treat. But so it's interesting now where we're reading this, where the zombie genre has pretty much been dragged and beaten to the pulp, and it wasn't that case. That wasn't the case when I first read this 10 to 15 years ago. Nobody really actually cared about zombies.
Zombies had a renaissance with 28 Days Later and the Dawn of the Dead remake.
So I read that I read this much the years before that happened. So at that point, the fear of the apocalypse and that sort of breakdown of society was such an interesting, terrifying thing that gets amplified when you actually think about it in your head. And so going into The Stand and going into book one this time, I actually was worried about that because I was just so tired of post-apocalyptic stories and apocalyptic stories now, because it's just been done to death. And I still think it works, and I still think it's compelling because, and I've seen a lot of critics and reviewers talk about how this set the bar for that type of narrative, and I absolutely agree with them, because none of them, including Romero's work, go to the level of complexity that this
with the
that this book
characters,
one
yeah.
has. Not even just with the characters, but just with how everything breaks down.
Yeah.
You read book one, and granted, King had an opportunity to go back and redo stuff, and add more stuff in, but it is so well thought out and so complicated and so like dense and layered that I really don't. I don't think there's like a stone untouched like that's in this.
And if you look at a lot of those books that he references as being inspirations, I Am Legend and On the Beach and whatever else, those are very much books. Even something like Planet of the Apes, like these are very much works of fiction that. Like I like what you guys are saying. It's not even post-apocalyptic; it's apocalyptic fiction. Mm-hmm. And all those works start off with like usually a dude waking up and like having to figure out what happened.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it wasn't the first, but at least the first of its quality that where it was like, no, I'm going to show you how it breaks down. And like I said, I don't know. There have been other good it's
like World War Z comes to mind.
Yeah,
because World War Z is
they
very
do show about that. Yeah,
and because you see it from it's like a multifaceted story.
Have you guys read Robert R. McCannon's Swan Song? You
were talking about that actually.
That's also a good one. It's not as good as The Stand, but it's similar in that he does show it on a global scale. I don't know which one came out first, but they're Robert R. McCammon out of Here at Boy's Life and a bunch of other stuff that's really good. But he Swan Song is maybe the one that comes closest, but it's still not quite as good as at least the first part of The Stand. So, Mike, what do you all you guys like better, The Walking Dead or
Yeah, right.
Boy.
I think this is easily the best apocalypse story. Like,
Walking Dead.
Book one.
Well,
Walking Dead.
Walking Dead sucks.
I like The Walking
Dead. I stopped watching Walking Dead during the first 4 years of Obama's administration. I gave up on it a long time ago. I'm sorry you guys kept with it. I'm sorry you were let down.
I stayed with it and was let down.
I'll be somewhat of a defender. I definitely think it's like flawed. And there's not much left the show has to say, but I thought this season was pretty good. I thought it was entertaining.
I think comparing
our boy Josh Michael.
I think comparing The Walking Dead to what we've just discussed is a bad comparison.
Well, because
anything of quality is probably a bad
it just goes back to patience again. Like King has the patience to let these details trickle out very slowly and very realistically and naturally. Even if you on the topic of Walking Dead. Look at Fear the Walking Dead. It was supposed to be this, and they rushed it by 3 episodes.
They had the problem with Fear the Walking Dead is they got it to more or less the same point as the first episode Walking Dead, which
missed opportunity.
4 episodes. Like why not have it?
That was really bizarre.
The biggest problem with Fear the Walking Dead is that they got Kim Dickens and said, "Let's give her nothing to do." That sounds great.
She's always good too.
All these reasons are reasons why I prefer The Walking Dude over The Walking Dead.
There we go.
Hey, but in terms of reading about government overreaching and thus tanking society,
read the news.
I was going to say read The Handmaid's Tale.
I was thinking.
Wait, read which one?
The Handmaid's Tale. And then that series is coming out.
Yeah, it looks good.
It's supposed to be really good.
That book, everyone should read that book, but especially if you have male parts, everybody should read that book.
I did.
And the great thing about that is that Margaret Atwood only uses things that have actually happened in human history.
Whoa.
So it's a dystopia that everything is real.
I feel like unnerved though now. I'm gonna be so scared.
And it's got that Elizabeth Moss, who I'm a big fan of.
Well, she's the best.
Anyways, well, thanks so much for listening, guys. This has been the first episode of our 4-part series in The Walking Dead. JK! This has been the first episode of our 4-part series on The Stand. Yeah, it's been great. Also, if you like the show, please like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram, and please, 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 please leave us an iTunes review. Those really help, and we really love hearing from you guys. And if you are a fan of our Facebook, you'll see that we actually respond, and we like to engage and talk to you guys. So please, don't be afraid to send us a message or something. Until next time, long days and pleasant nights.
I got some hot friends. God, I got some hot friends. I got some hot friends. God, I got some hot friends. But you want somebody to treat you good.
Consequence Podcast Network.